Yo yo yo, ChronoCrew Legends. It's your boy Chronos, and welcome to part 4 of What If Deku Had Mahoraga's Adaptation? And bruh, Deku is not the same anymore. That wheel is spinning, his instincts are sharpening, and the power scaling is going beyond logic. I just gotta say, thank you for all the wild support. You've been smashing the like goals and making this timeline one of the craziest on the channel, so hit that subscribe. Help us destroy the 100 like goal. And let's keep pushing this series into the next dimension. The night was still as Izuku Midoriya slept, his breathing steady and calm. Yet beneath this tranquil exterior, his mind was anything but quiet. In the metaphysical realm where the vestiges of One for All resided, something new was stirring. A tall, slender figure approached Izuku's mental projection. A man with sharp features and intense eyes that seemed to perceive threats invisible to others. I am Hikage Shinomori, fourth wielder of One for All. The figure introduced himself formally. My time as a bearer was spent in hiding, developing the ability to sense danger before it manifested. Izuku listened intently as Hikage explained his quirk, Danger Sense, an ability that provided intuitive awareness of impending threats through what felt like electric signals in the nervous system. Your adaptation quirk has reached a point where it can integrate my power, Hikage continued. With the challenges that lie ahead, this will prove invaluable. The adaptation will materialize in Izuku's mindscape, rotating gently as it processed this new ability. Unlike the violent physical transformations that had occurred during previous awakenings, this integration happened smoothly, a testament to Izuku's growing mastery over One for All. Practice this ability, Hikage advised as the dreamlike interaction concluded. Trust the sensations it provides, even when they seem irrational. When Izuku awakened the next morning, the lingering impression of Hikage's presence remained. Eager to test this new ability, he spent the pre-dawn hours in his room, blindfolding himself and attempting to sense objects his mother tossed toward him from various angles. Initially, the results were inconsistent. Sometimes he would feel a distinctive tingle moments before something approached, while other attempts yielded nothing. But with each practice throw, the adaptation will work to refine the connection, strengthening the neural pathways that transmitted these warning signals. That's amazing, Izuku! His mother exclaimed when he successfully caught a pillow thrown from behind without looking. Your quirk keeps developing in such fascinating ways. Izuku smiled, though he felt a familiar pang at the necessary deception. His mother still believed his abilities stemmed solely from a late-blooming adaptation quirk, unaware of One for All's legacy or the growing collection of abilities it contained. I should get ready for school, he said, removing the blindfold. Everyone's returning from their internships today. The adaptation will briefly manifested behind him as he prepared for the day ahead, its rotation steady and assured, no longer the erratic phenomenon it had been during his early days with One for All, but an integrated aspect of his developing power. The classroom buzzed with excited conversation as Class 1A reunited after their week of internships. Students eagerly exchanged stories about their experiences with professional heroes, each narrative more dramatic than the last. Dude, is it true you fought the hero killer? Kirishima asked Izuku, his sharp teeth forming an impressed grin. The videos online are insane. Before Izuku could respond, he was surrounded by classmates, all eager to hear firsthand about the confrontation that had dominated hero news for days. That little thing behind you looked so cool, Ashido exclaimed, her pink skin practically glowing with excitement. It was spinning super fast when you caught his blade. The way you integrated multiple quirk aspects simultaneously was remarkably efficient, Yaoyorozu added with scholarly interest. Your control has improved dramatically since the sports festival. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck, uncomfortable with the attention yet pleased by the genuine interest. It wasn't just me, he clarified. Ida and Gran Torino were there too, and don't lump me in with your accomplishment, Midoriya? Ida interrupted, his expression unusually solemn. I acted foolishly and endangered both myself and others. Your intervention is the only reason I'm standing here today. The class fell silent, sensing the emotional weight behind Ida's words. Though the official report had downplayed his role in the incident, those who knew him well could see the profound impact the experience had left. You've all had quite the eventful week, a monotone voice observed from the classroom entrance. Aizawa-sensei stood there, looking as perpetually exhausted as ever. But don't get comfortable. The semester is far from over. The students hurried to their seats as their homeroom teacher took his position at the front of the class, his bloodshot eyes surveying them with clinical detachment. Your internships provided valuable real-world experience, he continued, but they also highlighted areas where each of you needs improvement, which brings me to our next major hurdle. His expression darkened slightly. Final exams begin next week. A collective groan rippled through the classroom. After the intensity of their internships, many students had forgotten about the looming academic evaluations. The exams will have two components, Aizawa explained impassively. A written test covering the semester's academic material and a practical assessment of your hero capabilities. He paused, allowing this information to sink in before delivering the real bombshell. This year, however, there's been a change to the practical exam format. Instead of fighting robots as in previous assessments, the classroom door slid open to reveal several UA teachers, including Present Mike, Midnight, and Cementos, all wearing their hero costumes and sporting confident expressions. You'll be facing us, Aizawa finished, a rare hint of amusement in his otherwise deadpan voice. The revelation sent shockwaves through the class. Fighting robots was one thing. They were predictable, programmable, limited in their capabilities. But facing pro-heroes who had years of experience and fully developed quirks, that was an entirely different challenge. Each pair of students will be matched against a teacher, Aizawa continued, seemingly enjoying the students' dismay. The pairings will be announced next week. Your objective will be either to escape through a designated exit point or to successfully restrain your opponent using these. He held up a pair of specialized handcuffs, designed to nullify quirk usage when properly applied. Unlike the robots, we won't hold back based on your current skill level, he warned. Consider this a test of everything you've learned thus far. As Aizawa dismissed the class, encouraging them to use the week ahead for intensive preparation, Izuku's mind was already racing with strategic possibilities. The adaptation will briefly manifested behind him, processing this new challenge and beginning to formulate responses. We should organize a study group, Yaoyorozu suggested as students gathered their belongings. I can help anyone struggling with the written material, and we can discuss practical strategies as well. That's an excellent idea, Yaoyorozu-san, Ida agreed enthusiastically, his hand chopping the air in characteristic fashion. Group study will maximize our efficiency. As arrangements were made for the study session, Izuku found himself approached by an unexpected figure, Katsuki Bakugo, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since their return from internships. Deku, he said, his voice gruff but lacking its usual hostility. Got a minute? Surprised by the relatively civil tone, Izuku nodded and followed Bakugo into the hallway outside the classroom. They stood in awkward silence for several moments before Bakugo finally spoke. That fight with the hero killer, he began, staring intently at the floor rather than at Izuku. It was not terrible. Coming from Bakugo, this qualified as extravagant praise. Izuku remained silent, sensing there was more to come. Your control has improved, Bakugo continued grudgingly. The way you integrated multiple aspects of your quirk, it was decent strategy. He finally looked up, crimson eyes meeting Izuku's green ones with competitive fire. I still don't know how your pathetic quirk suddenly developed all these powers, but I'm not stupid enough to ignore what's right in front of me. You've gotten stronger. Izuku was momentarily speechless. This was perhaps the closest thing to acknowledgement Bakugo had ever offered him. That doesn't mean I accept losing to you, Bakugo clarified quickly, his trademark scowl returning. I'm still going to surpass you and become the #1 hero. Got it. A smile spread across Izuku's face despite himself. I wouldn't expect anything less, Kaken. Bakugo clicked his tongue in annoyance at the childhood nickname but didn't explode as he normally might have. Whatever. Just don't hold me back in these exams if we get paired together. With that, he stalked away, hands jammed in his pockets and shoulders hunched in what might have been embarrassment at having initiated a civil conversation. Izuku watched him go, the adaptation will briefly manifesting as it processed not just this interaction, but the broader implication. Bakugo was evolving too in his own way, and that evolution might eventually lead to a genuine rivalry rather than the one-sided antagonism that had characterized their relationship for so long. The week leading up to the exams passed in a blur of intensive study and training. True to her word, Yaoyorozu hosted daily study sessions at her expansive home, patiently guiding her classmates through complex material while providing lavish refreshments that left many wondering if this was how the wealthy lived every day. For Izuku, however, academic preparation was only half the challenge. Each evening after these study sessions, he retreated to the cleared space of his bedroom for a different kind of training, communion with the vestiges of one for all and practice with his growing arsenal of abilities. On the third night of this regimen, as he sat in deep meditation with the adaptation while slowly rotating behind him, a new vestige appeared in his mindscape, different from Hikage, who had manifested danger sense. This figure was stockier, with a determined set to his jaw and hands that seemed perpetually clenched for combat. Daichi Yoichi, the vestige, introduced himself, third bearer of One for All. My original quirk was evasion, the ability to store and release kinetic energy. With meticulous patience, Daichi explained the principles of his quirk, how repeated motions could accumulate energy that could later be released in devastating bursts, multiplying the user's speed and power without drawing directly on One for All's reserves. Your adaptation quirk has been gradually integrating my ability, Daichi explained, but conscious application will yield better results than passive absorption. Over the next several nights, Izuku practiced the foundations of evasion under Daichi's guidance, performing repeated movements to store energy, then learning to release it with precision rather than explosive force. The adaptation will work continuously during these sessions, optimizing the neural and muscular pathways necessary for efficient energy storage and release. During one particularly intense session, Izuku remembered something critical: the semi-transformation his body had undergone during the sports festival when breaking free of Shinso's brainwashing. That had been an adaptive response to a mental rather than physical threat, manifesting as temporary physical distortion. Could I trigger that transformation consciously? He wondered aloud, addressing both himself and the vestiges he now sensed were present even outside his meditative state. It's possible, Nana Shimura's voice echoed in his mind. Your body adapted to break mental control by creating a physical shock. With practice, you might replicate that process for other purposes. Focusing intently, Izuku attempted to recreate the sensation, imagining his fingers bending backward as they had during that crucial moment against Shinso. The adaptation will responded, spinning more rapidly as it processed this unusual request. For several attempts, nothing happened. Then, on his seventh try, a strange sensation rippled through his left hand. The fingers suddenly bent backward at unnatural angles, momentarily resembling the distortion that had occurred during the sports festival. The transformation lasted only seconds before reverting to normal, but it was enough to confirm the theory. With sufficient control and understanding, he could potentially direct his adaptations rather than simply responding to external stimuli. By the end of the week, Izuku had made significant progress with both evasion and his control over the adaptation process itself. While full mastery remained distant, he had added valuable tools to his arsenal just in time for the practical exams. The day of the written exams arrived with the expected mixture of anxiety and determination among Class 1A. For most students, this represented the more daunting of the two challenges. Fighting villains was what they trained for, but academic testing required different kinds of preparation. Present Mike administered the examination with uncharacteristic solemnity, his usually boisterous personality subdued by the formal requirements of the testing protocol. As the students worked through complex questions covering everything from hero law to rescue protocols, the classroom remained eerily silent except for the scratching of pencils and occasional sighs of frustration. For Izuku, whose analytical mind had always been his greatest strength even before receiving One for All, the written portion was challenging but manageable. His extensive notes and Yairozu's thorough study sessions had prepared him well for even the most obscure questions. When the results were announced the following morning, they contained few surprises. Yairozu had achieved a perfect score, with Ida and Todoroki close behind. Most of the class had performed adequately, though Kaminari and Ishido had fallen dangerously close to failing marks. Now for the moment you've been waiting for, Aizawa announced once the academic results had been discussed. The pairings for tomorrow's practical examination. The classroom screen illuminated to display the matchups. Midoriya and Bakugo versus All Might Todoroki and Yairozu versus Aizawa Ida and Ojiro versus Power Loader Kendo and Tokoyami versus Ectoplasm Uraraka and Aoyama versus 13 Ishido and Kaminari versus Present Mike Ajui and Shoji versus Midnight Kirishima and Sato versus Cementos Jiro and Kota versus Present Mike Hagakure and Siro versus Snipe. A collective gasp rippled through the classroom at the first pairing. Midoriya and Bakugo against All Might himself? It seemed almost cruel to pit students against the world's greatest hero, even with the handicap of the weight restraints he would undoubtedly wear to limit his overwhelming power. The pairings were determined based on complementary or conflicting personalities, as well as quirk compatibility, Aizawa explained, his tone suggesting he found some of the matchups particularly fitting. In real hero work, you don't always get to choose your partners. Izuku glanced toward Bakugo, who had gone very still at the announcement. Their eyes met briefly, competitive fire in Bakugo's crimson irises, determined resolve in Izuku's green ones. Whatever their personal history, they would need to work together against an opponent neither could hope to defeat individually. Each team will be tested separately, Aizawa continued. You'll have 30 minutes to either restrain your opponent or reach the designated exit point. Failure to accomplish either objective will result in failing the practical exam. As Aizawa dismissed them to prepare for the following day's challenges, animated discussions broke out throughout the classroom. Many teams immediately began strategizing, while others seemed paralyzed by the daunting matchups they faced. Izuku approached Bakugo cautiously, aware that their required cooperation might be interpreted as an insult by his volatile classmate. Kakin, we should— I know, Bakugo interrupted, surprising Izuku with his lack of outright hostility. Meet me at ground beta in an hour. We need to talk strategy. With that, he stalked out of the classroom, leaving Izuku momentarily stunned by this unprecedented willingness to collaborate. The practical examinations began the following morning under clear skies that belied the intensity of the challenges ahead. Each team waited in a designated preparation area, reviewing strategies and mentally preparing for their specific opponents. Throughout the day, Izuku and his classmates watched with mounting tension as each team faced their assigned teacher. The matchups proved as challenging as expected, the professionals demonstrating why they held their positions at Japan's premier hero academy. Todoroki and Yaoyorozu displayed impressive tactical thinking against Aizawa, using flash grenades to counter his erasure and creating an opening for escape rather than direct confrontation. Uraraka and Aoyama narrowly succeeded against 13 by exploiting the rescue hero's reluctance to use their black hole at full power. Azui and Shoji managed to evade Midnight Somnambulist long enough to secure their exit, thanks to Azui's frog-like agility and Shoji's sensory capabilities. Not all teams were successful, however. Kirishima and Sato found their strength-based quirks completely countered by Cementoss's ability to reshape the battlefield, eventually being trapped in a concrete prison with no means of escape. Ashido and Kaminari's lack of coordinated strategy led to their defeat against Present Mike, whose sonic attacks disrupted their individual efforts before they could synchronize effectively. As the day progressed toward its conclusion, tension mounted for the final and most anticipated matchup, Midoriya and Bakugo against All Might. The entire class gathered in the observation room to witness this climactic confrontation. Opinions divided on whether the explosive duo had any chance against the symbol of peace, even with his self-imposed limitations. Inside the preparation room, Izuku and Bakugo sat in uncharacteristic silence, each mentally reviewing the strategy they had developed during their practice session. The plan was simple in concept but would require flawless execution and unprecedented cooperation between two individuals whose relationship had been defined by conflict. Remember, Izuku said quietly as the 1-minute warning sounded, we're not trying to win a fight, we're trying to pass an exam. I know that, nerd, Bakugo growled, though without his usual venom. Just don't hold me back. As they stepped into the simulated cityscape that would serve as their battlefield, Izuku activated full cowling at 40%, a sustainable level that would allow for prolonged combat if necessary. The adaptation will manifested briefly behind him, processing the environment and preparing for the challenge ahead. Bakugo rolled his shoulders, miniature explosions crackling from his palms as he limbered up. Let's just get this over with. They advanced cautiously through the empty streets, Izuku's newly acquired danger sense scanning for threats while Bakugo maintained vigilant visual surveillance. Though they moved without verbal communication, their coordination showed the results of their intensive preparation, covering each other's blind spots and maintaining optimal spacing for their respective quirks. Ha ha ha! Trying to avoid confrontation, young heroes, All Might's booming voice echoed through the cityscape. A valid strategy, but villains don't always allow such luxury. The ground shook as the symbol of peace landed before them, his perpetual smile somehow more intimidating than reassuring in this context. Despite the weights visibly restricting his limbs, his presence alone was enough to send shivers down both students' spines. Show me what you've learned, All Might challenged, his massive form lunging forward with speed that belied his handicap. Bakugo reacted instantly, firing a precisely calibrated explosion that created a smoke screen rather than attempting damage. Simultaneously, Izuku activated Float and Black Whip, ascending rapidly while extending the dark tendrils to extract Bakugo from the danger zone. "Don't manhandle me, Deku!" Bakugo snarled as the tendrils wrapped around his waist, though he didn't resist the tactical repositioning. From their elevated vantage point, they watched All Might emerge from the smoke, his expression appreciative of their coordinated evasion. Good mobility, but how long can you avoid direct engagement? With a powerful leap that shattered the concrete beneath his feet, All Might launched himself toward their position. Izuku's danger sense flared intensely, providing split-second warning of the attack's trajectory. "Now!" Izuku called, releasing Bakugo at precisely the right moment. Using his explosions to pivot mid-air, Bakugo launched his AP shot, a concentrated beam of explosive force, directly at All Might's weighted bracers. Though the attack wouldn't harm the symbol of peace, it temporarily disrupted his aerial momentum. In that brief window of opportunity, Izuku descended with unprecedented speed, channeling one for all through legs adapted for maximum impact absorption. "Texas Smash!" he declared, delivering a powerful blow to All Might's crossed arms. The force of the impact created shockwaves that shattered nearby windows, yet All Might merely skidded backwards several meters, his guard unbroken. "Impressive power. Young Midoriya, your control has improved significantly." Without pausing to acknowledge the compliment, Izuku retreated using Float while Bakugo unleashed a barrage of explosions to cover their tactical withdrawal. They regrouped on a rooftop several buildings away, both breathing heavily not from exertion but from the sheer tension of confronting their mentor at even a fraction of his capability. "He's holding back, but still way beyond what we can handle directly," Izuku assessed, the adaptation while spinning rapidly behind him as it processed data from their brief exchange. "We need to stick to the plan. Coordinated hit-and-run tactics to work our way toward the exit." Bakugo nodded grimly, for once in complete agreement. His reflexes are ridiculous even with those weights. "We'll need to create bigger openings." Their discussion was interrupted by Izuku's danger sense flaring violently. "Move!" he shouted, tackling Bakugo just as All Might's massive fist shattered the concrete where they had been standing. "Strategizing is important," All Might acknowledged as he straightened from his attack posture. "But remaining stationary makes you predictable." What followed was a high-speed game of cat and mouse throughout the simulated city. Izuku and Bakugo employed every tactic in their arsenal. Smokescreen to obscure visibility, coordinated attacks from multiple angles, even using the urban environment to create temporary obstacles. Throughout the confrontation, Izuku's adaptation will work continuously, processing All Might's fighting style and developing increasingly effective countermeasures. With each exchange, Izuku's movements became more precise, his reactions faster, his counterattacks more effectively targeted against the symbol of peace's few limitations. Bakugo, too, displayed remarkable growth, not just in his combat capabilities, but in his willingness to follow tactical directions when they made strategic sense. Where the old Bakugo would have insisted on frontal assaults regardless of the odds, this more tempered version recognized the value of Izuku's analytical approach against a superior opponent. 15 minutes into the 30-minute time limit, they had made significant progress toward the exit point. All Might, recognizing their strategy, began to pressure them more aggressively, no longer testing but actively working to prevent their escape. "Time for Lesson 2, Young Heroes," he announced, removing one of his weighted bracers. "Sometimes villains escalate unexpectedly." The increase in All Might's speed and power was immediate and dramatic. Where before they had managed to maintain tactical distance, now he was upon them almost instantly, a Nebraska smash sending both students flying in separate directions despite their defensive preparations. Izuku crashed through a concrete wall, the adaptation while flaring brilliantly as it worked to mitigate damage from the impact. Rising shakily from the rubble, he activated Danger Sense to locate both Bakugo and All Might, assessing their revised situation. The exit point was now visible in the distance, perhaps 4 minutes of unimpeded travel away. But between them and their objective stood All Might, no longer smiling playfully but wearing the serious expression that real villains would recognize as the prelude to decisive action. "Kakin?" Izuku called as Bakugo rejoined him, nursing what appeared to be a dislocated shoulder. "We need to change tactics." He's not going to let us reach the exit through evasion anymore. Bakugo grimaced as he forced his shoulder back into place with a nauseating pop. No shit, Deku. Got any bright ideas? The adaptation will expanded behind Izuku as he analyzed their options, its rotation becoming more complex as it integrated everything it had processed about All Might's fighting style. In that moment, Izuku made a decision that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. I'm going to engage him directly, he stated, green energy intensifying around his form as he channeled 75% of One for All's power, his maximum sustainable output. Not to win, but to create an opening. When you see it, go for the exit at full speed. Don't wait for me. Bakugo's eyes widened at this declaration. Are you insane? Even with your adaptations, he'll crush you. Maybe, Izuku acknowledged. The adaptation will now fully manifested behind him, its rotation steady and purposeful. But my quirk gets stronger the longer I fight the same opponent. I've been adapting to his style since the beginning of this exam. Before Bakugo could protest further, Izuku stepped forward, addressing All Might directly. You've always been my inspiration, All Might, he called, his voice carrying conviction that transcended the artificial context of the exam. Everything I've learned about being a hero started with watching you, so it's fitting that I get to show you how far I've come. All Might's expression softened momentarily at this declaration before returning to professional seriousness. Come then, young Midoriya. Show me the hero you're becoming. What followed was unlike anything Class 1A had witnessed before. Izuku launched himself toward All Might with explosive speed, channeling One for All's power through pathways optimized by continuous adaptation. The green energy of full cowling interpenetrated with Black Whip's dark tendrils, creating a visual display reminiscent of lightning crackling through storm clouds. All Might met this charge with appropriate force, his massive fist connecting directly with Izuku's guard. The impact created a shockwave that cracked the pavement beneath them, yet Izuku remained standing, his adapted form absorbing and redistributing the tremendous force. Impressive durability, All Might acknowledged, following immediately with a leg sweep that Izuku narrowly avoided. The exchange continued at blinding speed, All Might's decades of combat experience facing Izuku's rapidly evolving adaptations. What began as a one-sided confrontation gradually transformed into something more balanced as Izuku's body continuously refined its responses to All Might's techniques. From the sidelines, Bakugo watched with reluctant amazement as Izuku not only survived but increasingly matched All Might's movements. The adaptation will behind Izuku expanded to its largest manifestation yet, processing combat data at unprecedented rates. When All Might delivered a straight punch aimed directly at Izuku's face, a blow that would have incapacitated most pro heroes despite the weight limiting his strength, something extraordinary happened. Izuku didn't dodge or block. He simply stood his ground, the adaptation will flaring brilliantly behind him. The impact when All Might's fist connected with Izuku's face created another shockwave, dust billowing from the point of contact. But when visibility returned, the outcome was astonishing. Izuku remained standing, unmoved, the adaptation while spinning serenely behind him as his body completed its evolution against All Might's attack pattern. A genuine smile spread across Izuku's face as he looked up at his mentor. Nice hit, All Might, he said calmly. But I'm next. In that moment, Izuku channeled evasion, releasing the kinetic energy he had been accumulating throughout the prolonged exchange. Combined with One for All at 75%, the result was a devastating Delaware smash that connected squarely with All Might's solar plexus. Despite his immense durability, the symbol of peace was launched backward, crashing through several buildings before finally halting his momentum. The brief window of opportunity Izuku had promised Bakugo had arrived. Go now, Izuku shouted, maintaining his position to prevent All Might's immediate pursuit. For once, Bakugo didn't argue. Using his explosions for maximum propulsion, he launched himself toward the exit with extraordinary speed, understanding that Izuku's gambit would be meaningless if they failed to complete the objective. All Might emerged from the debris, his costume showing damage but his spirit undimmed. That was quite the punch, young Midoriya. But the exam isn't over yet. He prepared to pursue Bakugo, only to find his path blocked by Izuku. The adaptation will now pulsing with energy that seemed to distort the air around it. I'm your opponent, All Might, Izuku stated with quiet determination. Kaken is just following the mission parameters. What followed was a final, intense exchange between teacher and student, mentor and successor. All Might, recognizing the significance of what was occurring, removed his remaining weights to test Izuku's adaptations at their limit. "Show me everything you've become," All Might challenged, his power no longer significantly restrained. Izuku responded by channeling 100% of One for All for a brief, critical moment, the adaptation will expanding to encompass his entire form as it worked to contain and direct this overwhelming power. Foe 100%. Detroit Smash, he declared, meeting All Might's smash with his own version. The collision of these tremendous forces created an explosion of energy that temporarily blinded the observation systems, leaving spectators in suspense about the outcome. When visibility returned, both figures were still standing, though Izuku was clearly at his limit. The adaptation will fading as it worked to heal the strain of using One for All at full capacity. In that moment, the exam timer sounded, and Bakugo's voice came through the communication system. "I made it to the exit, you damn nerds. We passed." All Might's serious expression dissolved into his characteristic smile as he placed a gentle hand on Izuku's shoulder. "Well done, young Midoriya," he said. His voice no longer projected for theatrical effect but warm with genuine pride. "Your adaptations have progressed beyond what any of us anticipated." Izuku swayed slightly, exhaustion catching up with him now that the immediate challenge had passed. "I still have a long way to go," he acknowledged, thinking of the vestiges and the powers yet to be fully integrated. "Perhaps," All Might agreed, supporting his successor as they began walking toward the exit where Bakugo waited. "But today you proved something important, not just to me, but to yourself. Your growth isn't limited by conventional parameters. Each challenge you face doesn't just make you temporarily stronger. It fundamentally transforms what you're capable of." As they emerged from the battlefield, Izuku was greeted by the impressed faces of his classmates, who had witnessed the extraordinary confrontation through the observation system. Even Bakugo, standing apart with arms crossed, offered a grudging nod of acknowledgement, as close to open respect as he was capable of expressing. Recovery Girl immediately descended upon Izuku, clicking her tongue at the strain he had placed on his body. "Reckless as always," she muttered, though her healing kiss quickly addressed the worst of his injuries. "Though I must admit, your body recovers more efficiently with each incident. This adaptation of yours is quite remarkable." As the practical exams concluded and students prepared for their summer break, Izuku found himself contemplating the journey ahead. The adaptation will had once again proven its extraordinary potential, evolving his capabilities beyond what even he had thought possible. The day after the practical exams, Class 1 had gathered in their homeroom, awaiting the final results. Though most students had successfully passed both components, an air of tension remained regarding those who had fallen short in either the written or practical evaluations. Aizawa stood at the front of the classroom, his perpetually exhausted expression somehow more severe than usual. "Before we discuss summer training camp arrangements," he began, "I should address those who failed to meet the required standards." Ishido and Kaminari visibly slumped in their seats, having struggled with both examinations. Kirishima and Sato exchanged concerned glances, their defeat at Cementas's hands weighing heavily on their minds. "Those who failed the practical exam," Aizawa paused, allowing tension to build, "will still be attending the training camp." Confused murmurs rippled through the classroom at this unexpected announcement. However, Aizawa continued, silencing the chatter with a stern glare, "You'll be receiving supplementary lessons in addition to the regular training regimen. Consider it remedial education for your deficiencies." Relief washed over the faces of those who had failed, though the prospect of extra lessons tempered their enthusiasm somewhat. "The training camp will begin next week," Aizawa concluded. "Use your weekend to prepare appropriately." Dismissed. As students filed out of the classroom, excited discussions about the upcoming camp filled the hallways. For many, this represented their first extended field training, a chance to develop their quirks away from the controlled environment of UA's facilities. "We should pick up some supplies before the trip," Yaoyorozu suggested as several classmates gathered in the corridor. "I heard the camp is quite remote." "Karo, good idea," Ajui agreed. "Maybe we could all go to the mall tomorrow?" Plans were quickly established for a group shopping expedition, with most of Class 1A agreeing to meet at Kiyoshi Ward Shopping Mall the following day. When Izuku arrived at the bustling shopping center, he found several of his classmates already present, enthusiastically discussing their supply lists and summer plans. "Midoriya," Uraraka called, waving him over with her characteristic energy. "We were just deciding where to start shopping. Sorry I'm late," Izuku apologized, joining the group. "My mom kept adding things to my shopping list." Kendo playfully punched his shoulder. "Typical parents, right? Mine packed enough sunscreen to cover an entire agency." The class decided to split into smaller groups based on the items they needed, agreeing to reconvene at the food court in 2 hours. Izuku found himself wandering through the mall's hero equipment section with Kendo and Ida, examining specialized training gear that might help during their camp activities. As Izuku inspected a pair of impact-resistant gloves, a sudden, sharp sensation shot through his nervous system, the unmistakable warning of danger sense activating. The adaptation will briefly manifested behind him, processing the nature of the threat before it had even fully materialized. Izuku's head snapped up, eyes scanning the crowded mall with newfound intensity. The source of danger wasn't immediately apparent, but the sensation was growing stronger, more urgent. "Midoriya?" Kendo questioned, noticing his sudden alertness. "What's wrong?" Before he could respond, Izuku caught sight of a figure moving through the crowd. A slender man with light blue hair and a distinctive hand obscuring his face. Recognition struck like lightning. "Tamura Shigaraki," Izuku whispered, his body tensing instinctively. Without hesitation, Izuku activated full cowling at 45%. Green energy crackling around his form as he launched himself across the shopping area. Shoppers scattered in surprise as he vaulted over displays and kiosks, closing the distance to the League of Villains leader with explosive speed. "Get down!" Izuku shouted to the civilians in his path, the adaptation will expanding behind him as he prepared for combat. Shigaraki turned just as Izuku reached striking distance, his bloodshot eyes widening slightly at the unexpected confrontation. "The adapter boy!" he hissed, recognition evident in his voice. "Detroit Smash!" Izuku roared, channeling One for All into a devastating straight punch aimed directly at Shigaraki's center mass. The attack never connected. A swirling vortex of dark mist materialized between them, enveloping Shigaraki before Izuku's fist could make contact. The punch passed harmlessly through empty air as Kurogiri's warp gate closed, leaving no trace of either villain. Izuku skidded to a halt, frustration evident in his expression as he scanned the area for any sign of the villain's reappearance. His danger sense had subsided, suggesting the immediate threat had passed, but the implications of Shigaraki's presence in a civilian-filled mall were deeply troubling. "Midoriya!" Ida's voice called out as he and Kendo pushed through the bewildered crowd. "What happened? Was that Shigaraki?" Izuku confirmed grimly. "He was here, but Kurogiri warped him away before I could engage." Mall security arrived moments later, followed shortly by police officers responding to reports of quirk usage and possible villain activity. Izuku provided a detailed statement, describing Shigaraki's appearance and expressing concern about potential League of Villains operations. "You did the right thing by attempting to apprehend him," Detective Tsukachi assured Izuku after taking his statement. "But next time, try to alert professional heroes first. Shigaraki is incredibly dangerous, even for someone with your adaptive capabilities." By the time the police had finished their investigation and statements had been collected from all witnesses, the shopping expedition had been thoroughly disrupted. The remainder of Class 1 gathered around Izuku, expressions ranging from concern to admiration. "That was so manly," Kirishima exclaimed, clapping Izuku on the shoulder. "You didn't hesitate for a second." "It was also incredibly reckless," Ida noted, though his tone held more worry than reprimand. "Shigaraki can decay everything he touches." Izuku nodded, acknowledging the valid critique. "I know, but I couldn't just let him wander through a crowded mall. If he'd decided to attack civilians, the implications hung heavily in the air." After discussing the incident with their teachers via phone, the class decided to conclude their shopping trip early, wary of potential follow-up attacks or surveillance. As they departed, Izuku couldn't shake the sense that Shigaraki's presence hadn't been coincidental. The adaptation will manifested briefly behind him, seemingly sharing his concern as it processed the implications of this encounter. The morning of the training camp departure arrived with clear skies and excited chatter as Class 1A assembled outside UA's main building. 2 large buses waited to transport them to their destination, which Aizawa had kept deliberately vague despite numerous inquiries. "Everyone's present and accounted for," Ida reported officially, clipboard in hand as he completed his final headcount. Class 1A is ready to depart, Aizawa-sensei. Good, Aizawa acknowledged flatly. Board the buses. It's a long journey. The atmosphere inside the vehicles was jubilant as they departed campus, students speculating about the training regimen and expressing enthusiasm for spending extended time together outside the classroom environment. I heard the Pussycats run this camp, Kendo informed those sitting nearby. They're a 4-person hero team specializing in mountain rescue. Mountain rescue, huh? Bakugo muttered, uncharacteristically thoughtful. Means rough terrain training, probably endurance work. Several hours into their journey, the buses deviated from the main highway onto progressively narrower mountain roads. The dense forest surrounding them grew wilder with each passing kilometer, until finally, the vehicles pulled to a stop at what appeared to be nothing more than a scenic overlook. Everyone out, Aizawa instructed, stepping off the bus without further explanation. The students followed, confusion evident as they assembled on the mountain roadside. The view was admittedly spectacular. A vast forest spread below them, with distant mountains creating a dramatic backdrop. But there was no sign of facilities, buildings, or anything resembling a training camp. Sensei? Uraraka ventured hesitantly. Is this the right place? Before Aizawa could respond, four colorful figures appeared at the overlook's edge, striking elaborate poses that immediately identified them as professional heroes rather than random tourists. Hello, little kittens. The heroes called in perfect synchronization, maintaining their dramatic poses. We are the wild Pussycats. The hero team introduced themselves individually. Mandalay in red, Pixie Bob in blue, Tiger in yellow, and Ragdoll in green, their coordinated movements suggesting this was a well-rehearsed routine performed for all newcomers to their domain. Welcome to our territory, Mandalay concluded, gesturing dramatically toward the expansive forest below. For the next week, you'll be developing your quirks and hero capabilities under our expert guidance. Pixie Bob stepped forward, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. The training facility is located at the base of this mountain, she explained, pointing to a distant clearing barely visible amid the dense forest. To get there, you'll need to make your way through Beast's Forest. That looks like it's at least 10 kilometers away, Kaminari observed nervously. You're not expecting us to walk all that way, are you? Pixie Bob's smile widened to almost predatory dimensions. Walk? Oh no, dear kitten. You're going to fight your way there. Before anyone could process this declaration, the ground beneath their feet suddenly liquefied. Pixie Bob's earth flow quirk transformed the solid overlook into a mudslide that sent the entire class tumbling over the edge and down the mountainside. Izuku activated float instinctively, stabilizing himself mid-air as his classmates tumbled around him. The adaptation will manifested behind him, analyzing the rapidly changing situation and preparing appropriate responses. Deku, Uraraka called out as she plummeted past him. Help! Without hesitation, Izuku deployed Black Whip, the dark tendrils extending to catch several falling classmates. But before he could secure everyone, Pixie Bob appeared at the cliff edge, wagging her finger playfully. No shortcuts, Divine General, she called out, using Izuku's hero name. Everyone experiences the forest from ground level. With a flick of her wrist, she sent another wave of manipulated earth that engulfed Izuku and his suspended classmates, depositing them firmly at the forest's edge alongside everyone else. It's currently 9:30 a.m., Mandalay's voice projected from above. If you apply yourselves, you might reach the facility by lunchtime. Lunch? Kirishima exclaimed in disbelief. That's hours away. Izuku regained his footing, brushing dirt from his uniform as the adaptation will continued its analysis. His danger sense was tingling mildly, not indicating immediate lethal threats, but definitely suggesting challenges ahead. Everyone, he called out, drawing his classmates' attention. This is a test of our collective abilities. I think we should. His warning was interrupted by a thunderous rumbling as the forest floor began to shift. Massive earthen figures rose from the ground, crude but powerful golems crafted from soil, stone, and forest debris by Pixie Bob's earth flow. They're testing our combat capabilities in unfamiliar terrain, Izuku realized aloud, full cowling activating at 50% as the adaptation will expanded behind him. We need to work together. Speak for yourself, Deku. Bakugo snarled, launching himself toward the nearest golem with explosive propulsion. I don't need help to smash some dirt clods. As Bakugo engaged the first golem, more earthen creatures emerged from the forest, quickly surrounding the scattered students. Todoroki created an ice barrier to protect a group of classmates, while Kendo expanded her hands to grapple with a particularly large opponent. Izuku assessed the situation rapidly, noting that the golems seemed designed to test their abilities rather than cause serious harm. With that understanding, he decided to demonstrate his progress since the sports festival. "Everyone, get clear!" he shouted, channeling One for All into his lower body as he leaped high above the battlefield. At the apex of his jump, Izuku oriented himself toward the largest concentration of earthen creatures, the adaptation while spinning rapidly behind him as he combined Fa Jin's stored energy with 60% of One for All's output. "Wyoming Smash!" he declared, bringing his heel down with devastating force. The impact shattered the forest floor, creating a localized earthquake that fractured dozens of golems simultaneously. Trees swayed dangerously and loose stones bounced across the newly cratered terrain as Izuku's attack demonstrated just how far his control had progressed. From the overlook, the Pussycats watched with professional interest. "That one's different from the others," Tiger observed, muscular arms crossed as he studied Izuku's display of power. "His quirk seems to be evolving even as we watch." "The adaptation wheel is fascinating," Ragdoll agreed, her quirk allowing her to observe and catalog each student's capabilities in remarkable detail. "It's processing and optimizing his responses in real time. I've never seen anything quite like it." Back in the forest, the students rallied around Izuku's decisive action, coordinating their own attacks against the remaining golems with newfound strategic cohesion. "Todoroki, freeze that group on the left," Izuku directed, pointing to a cluster of advancing earth creatures. "Bakugo, Kendo, take the right flank. Everyone else, form defensive positions and conserve energy." This is just the beginning. For the next several hours, Class 1 have fought their way through the forest, facing waves of increasingly sophisticated earthen opponents. What began as crude golems evolved into more specialized creatures, some armored with stone plating that resisted simple attacks, others quick and agile, designed to test reaction times and coordination. Throughout this journey, Izuku found his body continuously adapting not just to combat but to the forest environment itself. His lungs developed enhanced efficiency at processing the mountain air. His skin adapted to the changing temperatures as they traversed sun-dappled clearings and shadowy ravines. His eyes adjusted to spotting camouflaged threats amid the dense vegetation. By mid-afternoon, the exhausted but triumphant students finally emerged from the forest's edge to see their destination, a modest facility nestled in a protected valley, with training grounds and dormitory buildings visible in the distance. "We made it!" Uraraka exclaimed, though her usual enthusiasm was tempered by obvious fatigue. Almost everyone showed signs of the journey's toll: torn uniforms, minor injuries, and the bone-deep weariness that comes from hours of continuous quirk usage and physical exertion. Only Izuku appeared relatively fresh, his adaptations having continuously optimized his stamina and recovery throughout the ordeal. The Pussycats awaited them at the facility entrance, having used their own transportation methods to arrive well ahead of the students. 3:30 p.m., Mandalay announced, checking her watch with a slightly impressed expression. "Better than average for first years, though not a record." "You all did excellently," Ragdoll enthused, her energetic personality seemingly immune to the general exhaustion. "Especially considering how many of Pixie Bob's babies you defeated along the way." Pixie Bob herself eyed the male students with particular interest, her gaze lingering on Izuku, Todoroki, and Bakugo. "So many promising kittens this year," she purred, making several students shift uncomfortably. "I might have to claim one before my time limit runs out." "Ignore her," Tiger advised flatly. "Now get yourselves cleaned up. You'll be preparing your own dinner tonight as part of your training." As the students moved toward the dormitory building to change and refresh themselves, Izuku noticed a small figure standing apart from the group, a young boy, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, watching them with undisguised contempt. "Who's that?" Izuku asked Mandalay as he passed. "My nephew Kota," she explained with a slightly apologetic smile. "He's staying with us during the camp. He's a bit wary of heroes and hero students." As if to demonstrate this wariness, Kota approached Izuku with determined steps, his small face set in a scowl. Without warning, he launched a punch directly toward Izuku's groin, a calculated attack at what would normally be a vulnerable target. Izuku's danger sense activated instantaneously, allowing him to casually shift his stance and catch the incoming fist with gentle precision before it could connect. "Nice form," Izuku commented kindly, releasing the boy's hand. "But maybe we could start with a handshake next time?" Kota's scowl deepened at having his attack so easily neutralized. "I hate heroes," he declared flatly before turning and stalking away. Mandalay sighed heavily. "I apologize for his behavior. He's been through a lot." "No need to apologize," Izuku assured her, watching the retreating child with empathetic eyes. "We all process difficulty in different ways." After changing into more comfortable attire, the students gathered in the facility's kitchen to prepare their evening meal under Tiger's strict supervision. Despite their exhaustion, the collaborative cooking created a light-hearted atmosphere as culinary disasters and surprising successes emerged from various workstations. Following dinner, the Pussycats directed the students to the facility's natural hot springs, separate baths for male and female students, designed to help their bodies recover from the day's exertions. Izuku sank gratefully into the steaming water, feeling his adapted muscles respond positively to the mineral-rich bath. Even with his enhanced recovery capabilities, the hot spring's therapeutic properties were undeniably beneficial. "That thing appeared a lot today," Bakugo observed from across the bath, his usual aggression tempered by exhaustion. "It's getting more visible." Izuku nodded, having noticed the same phenomenon. "The adaptations are becoming more efficient," he explained. "Less reactive and more integrated." "Whatever that means," Bakugo muttered, though without his usual dismissiveness. There was something like reluctant respect in his tone, the acknowledgement of power he couldn't entirely understand but couldn't deny either. Their conversation was interrupted by a startled yell from above. Looking up, Izuku saw Kota teetering dangerously on the dividing wall between the male and female baths, apparently having lost his balance while patrolling this boundary. Acting instinctively, Izuku deployed Black Whip, the dark tendrils extending upward to safely catch the falling child before he could hit the hard stone surrounding the bath. With careful control, he lowered Kota to the ground beside him. "Are you okay?" Izuku asked, dismissing Black Whip once Kota was secure. Instead of responding, the boy scrambled away, his expression a mixture of fear and resentment at requiring rescue. He fled the bathing area without a word, leaving Izuku concerned about his well-being beyond the physical. After ensuring Kota wasn't injured, Izuku sought out Mandalay to return the boy to her care. He found her preparing materials for the next day's training, her expression softening with concern when he explained what had happened. "Thank you for catching him," she said sincerely. "Kota often wanders off on his own. He has a hiding place somewhere up the mountain where he goes to be alone. If you don't mind me asking," Izuku ventured carefully, "why does he seem to hate heroes so much?" Mandalay hesitated before responding, her professional demeanor briefly giving way to personal sadness. Kota's parents were the water hose duo, professional heroes who died saving civilians from a villain attack 2 years ago. Instead of finding comfort in their heroism, Kota rejected the entire concept. He sees heroes as people who abandon those they love for strangers. The revelation struck Izuku deeply. I can't imagine how difficult that must be for him. "He needs time," Mandalay said simply, "and possibly the right example to help him understand what being a hero truly means." The conversation left Izuku thoughtful as he returned to the dormitory, the adaptation will briefly manifesting behind him as he processed not just physical stimuli, but emotional and ethical complexities as well. The next morning began with Tiger's specially designed, refreshing exercises, a punishing routine that had even the physically strongest students gasping for breath within minutes. Only Izuku seemed capable of maintaining the pace without visible strain, his body continuously adapting to the increasing demands. "Your real training begins now," Pixie Bob declared once the warm-up concluded. "Each of you will be focusing on specialized development of your quirks, based on analyses we conducted during yesterday's forest exercise." The training area transformed into distinct zones, each designed to push specific aspects of different quirks to their limits. Bakugo was assigned to an area where he would create the largest explosions possible in rapid succession, testing his output and recovery. Todoroki alternated between generating maximum flames and ice, working to reduce the temperature shock to his body. Uraraka lifted increasingly heavy objects while combating her nausea reflex. For Izuku, the Pussycats had designed something unique, a combat simulation area where he would face Bakugo and Todoroki simultaneously, his adaptation abilities tested against their continuously evolving attacks. "Are you serious?" Bakugo questioned when Aizawa explained the arrangement. "You want us to go all out against Deku?" "Not quite all out," Aizawa clarified. "But yes, the purpose is to force Midoriya's adaptations to respond to multiple high-level threats simultaneously. Your quirks provide ideal stimuli for this process." Todoroki nodded thoughtfully. "Our powers operate on fundamentally different principles: heat versus cold, concussive force versus temperature manipulation. His adaptations will need to develop multifaceted responses." "Exactly," Aizawa confirmed. "For you too, this exercise develops precision and tactical thinking. For Midoriya, it accelerates his adaptive evolution. Begin when ready." The training session that followed was unlike anything Izuku had experienced before. Bakugo and Todoroki coordinated their attacks with surprising synchronicity, creating combination assaults that required complex adaptations to counter. When Todoroki flash froze the ground beneath Izuku's feet, Bakugo immediately followed with aerial bombardment from above. The adaptation will manifested prominently behind Izuku, spinning with increasing complexity as it processed these multi-layered challenges. His skin developed resistance to both extreme temperatures. His reflexes sharpened to track simultaneous threats from different vectors. His energy efficiency improved to maintain full cowling while deploying other abilities as needed. "Don't hold back," Izuku called to his training partners as he successfully evaded another combination attack. "I need genuine pressure to trigger meaningful adaptations." Taking him at his word, Bakugo unleashed his howitzer impact while Todoroki simultaneously generated his most powerful flame attack. The resulting collision of forces would have incapacitated most pro-heroes. Yet Izuku stood his ground, the adaptation will flaring brilliantly as it processed this extreme stimulus. When the dust settled, Izuku remained standing, his body visibly changed, skin now showing a subtle armored quality. Eyes adapted for improved visibility through smoke and debris, respiratory system modified to filter the superheated air. "Holy shit!" Bakugo muttered, genuine amazement briefly overriding his perpetual irritation. "You're not even damaged." "That's not entirely accurate," Izuku corrected, rolling shoulders that showed signs of strain beneath the adaptive protection. "I'm still feeling the impacts. The adaptations just redistribute and mitigate the damage rather than eliminating it completely." Nearby, Aizawa watched with analytical interest, noting details of Izuku's transformations in a specialized notebook. Whatever conclusions he reached remained private, but his occasional nods suggested the process was developing as expected, or perhaps even exceeding expectations. This pattern continued throughout the day, each student pushing their quirks' limits under the watchful guidance of the Pussycats and UA faculty. By evening, exhaustion was universal, muscles trembling with exertion and quirks responding sluggishly after hours of continuous usage. During dinner preparation, Izuku noticed Kota slipping away from the facility, heading toward the mountain path alone. Concern prompted him to follow at a discreet distance, activating float to avoid leaving traceable footprints. The boy's destination proved to be a small cave overlooking the training grounds, a private sanctuary with a surprisingly impressive view of both the facility and the surrounding forest. Kota sat at the cave's edge, small legs dangling over the precipice as he stared contemplatively at the sunset. "That's a great hideout," Izuku commented, revealing his presence at a respectful distance. "Mind if I join you?" Kota startled at the intrusion, his expression quickly shifting from surprise to irritation. "Go away. This is my secret place." Instead of leaving, Izuku settled nearby, maintaining enough separation to respect the boy's space while still enabling conversation. "Mandalay told me about your parents," he said gently. "The water hose duo were incredible heroes." "They were idiots," Kota snapped, unexpected vehemence in his young voice. "They died showing off their stupid quirks, leaving me all alone." "What's so great about that?" The raw pain in the child's words resonated deeply with Izuku. "They weren't showing off, Kota. They were saving people. People who got to go home to their families because your parents were brave enough to stand between them and danger." "So what?" Kota demanded, angry tears forming in his eyes. "Why is some stranger's life worth more than being there for your own kid? Why do heroes think that's okay?" The question wasn't merely childish petulance. It struck at fundamental ethical questions that many adult heroes struggled with. The adaptation will manifested quietly behind Izuku, processing not physical stimuli but philosophical complexity. I don't think any hero believes other lives are worth more than their families, Izuku answered thoughtfully. But they understand something important, that everyone is someone's loved one. The people your parents saved were other children's parents, other parents' children, people who mattered deeply to someone else. He paused, allowing this perspective to settle before continuing. Heroes don't choose strangers over family. They choose to protect everyone's family, including their own, by confronting dangers that would otherwise hurt many more people. Kota remained silent, his expression suggesting he was processing these words despite his reluctance. Your parents loved you, Kota, Izuku added softly. Everything they did, including their final battle, was part of building a world where you could grow up safely. Being angry at them is okay. Missing them is okay. But please don't think they chose heroism over you. They chose heroism for you, and for everyone else who needs protection. Without waiting for a response, Izuku stood to leave, sensing the boy needed space to consider these perspectives privately. I'll bring you some dinner later if you want to stay up here, he offered. Just don't stay out too late. As Izuku made his way back to the facility, unsure if his words had made any impact, a subtle sensation prickled at his consciousness. Danger sense activating at low intensity, suggesting not immediate threat but something concerning in the environment. Pausing mid-step, Izuku expanded his awareness, the adaptation while manifesting as it enhanced his sensory capabilities. There was something in the air, a faint chemical odor carried on the evening breeze, almost imperceptible but triggering warning responses in his adapted olfactory system. Gas? He murmured, focusing on identifying the scent. Not natural gas or common pollutants, but something deliberately introduced to the environment, something designed to affect human physiology. Without hesitation, Izuku returned to the facility, finding Aizawa supervising the cleanup after dinner. Sensei, he said urgently, keeping his voice low to prevent panic. I think there's something wrong. My danger sense is detecting a potential threat, some kind of gas or chemical in the air around the perimeter. Aizawa's expression sharpened instantly, years of professional experience allowing him to shift from teacher to pro-hero without hesitation. Are you certain? What exactly are you sensing? It's subtle, Izuku explained, but my adaptations are responding to it as a foreign substance. It smells artificial, potentially soporific or hallucinogenic based on how my respiratory system is attempting to filter it. Without questioning further, Aizawa activated his communication device. Mandalay Tiger Security Protocol 3. Possible environmental contamination. Keep the students inside and initiate air filtration systems. He turned back to Izuku, expression grim. If you're right, this could be preparation for an attack. The training camp's location is supposed to be confidential, but after the USJ incident, we can't dismiss the possibility of information leaks. What about Kota? Izuku asked urgently. He's still up on the mountainside at his secret hideout. I know where it is, Mandalay confirmed through the communication system, having overheard their exchange. I'll retrieve him immediately. No, Aizawa countermanded. If this is indeed preparation for an attack, we need you coordinating defense here with your telepath quirk. Midoriya, I'll get him, Izuku volunteered immediately. I know exactly where he is, and my adaptations can filter whatever gas might be present. After a moment's consideration, Aizawa nodded. Go. But priority one is bringing the boy back safely. Avoid engagement with any potential hostiles unless absolutely necessary. With that authorization, Izuku activated full cowling at 60%. The adaptation will expanding behind him as he prepared for potential combat conditions. His respiratory system had already begun developing specialized filtration capabilities in response to the detected chemical, while his vision adapted for enhanced night perception. As he raced back toward Kota's hideout, Izuku's danger sense intensified dramatically, no longer a subtle warning but an urgent alert to immediate threat. Accelerating his pace, he reached the mountain path in time to see a massive figure approaching Kota's cave from the opposite direction. The figure was unmistakable even in the gathering darkness. Bulging, exposed musculature, a distinctive face mask, and an aura of menace that required no quirk to detect. Muscular, the villain responsible for at least 23 confirmed kills, was advancing toward the unwitting child. Without hesitation, Izuku changed course, interposing himself between the approaching villain and Kota's hideout. He landed firmly on the path, the adaptation will fully manifested and rotating with deadly purpose behind him. That's far enough, Izuku declared, voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Muscular paused, his single exposed eye widening with interest as he assessed this unexpected obstacle. Well, he rumbled, his deep voice carrying casual malice. If it isn't UA's famous adapter, Divine General, isn't it? The wheel kid from the sports festival. Leave now, Izuku responded, already channeling 70% of One for All's power through his adapted pathways. This area is under hero protection. A cruel laugh escaped the villain as muscle fibers began bulging beneath his skin, visibly increasing his already imposing mass. Hero protection? Kid, I came here specifically for heroes. The boss wants a souvenir, that explosive brat from your class. But I'm allowed to have some fun along the way. Muscular launched forward with frightening speed, his muscle augmentation quirk propelling his massive form like a freight train. Let's see how well you adapt to being crushed. The adaptation will spun rapidly as Izuku assessed the incoming threat, cataloging Muscular's movement patterns and the particular properties of his quirk. Instead of evading, Izuku met the charge directly, channeling One for All into a perfectly timed counter. Manchester Smash, he declared, driving his fist into Muscular's center mass with precision born of continuous adaptation. The impact created a shockwave that split the air and cratered the ground beneath them. Yet Muscular merely skidded backwards several meters, his augmented muscles absorbing the tremendous force with minimal visible damage. Not bad, kid, the villain exclaimed, genuine excitement in his voice. Most heroes I hit don't get back up. This might actually be fun. What followed was a brutal exchange of physical power, Muscular's augmented strength against Izuku's continuously adapting form. Each impact provided new data for the adaptation wheel to process, gradually refining Izuku's responses to the villain's particular fighting style. Behind a rocky outcropping, Kota watched with wide eyes as the student who had spoken so earnestly about heroism now demonstrated its physical manifestation, placing himself between danger and the innocent without hesitation. That strength of yours is impressive, Muscular acknowledged after several exchanges left both combatants breathing heavily. But my muscles are special. They can grow and grow until they're unstoppable. As if to demonstrate, additional muscle fibers erupted from beneath his skin, wrapping around his limbs and torso in grotesque layers that increased his size dramatically. Let's see how you handle this. The enhanced villain moved with shocking speed despite his increased mass, his fist connecting with Izuku's guard with force that shattered nearby rocks from the shockwave alone. Despite his adaptation's continuous reinforcement, Izuku felt his bones creak under the tremendous pressure. Yet even as pain registered, the adaptation will expanded dramatically, its rotation becoming more complex as it processed this extreme stimulus. Izuku's skeletal structure began reinforcing itself in real time, his muscle fibers reconfigured for improved shock absorption, his neural pathways optimized for combat against this specific opponent. With a sudden surge of counterforce, Izuku broke Muscular's guard and delivered a devastating Delaware smash directly to the villain's exposed eye. The precision strike momentarily disrupted Muscular's concentration, creating an opening for a follow-up attack. Carolina Smash, Izuku roared, delivering a double cross chop that sent Muscular crashing through several trees before embedding him in the mountainside. Wow, Kota whispered from his hiding place, temporarily overriding his anti-hero sentiment as he witnessed power beyond anything he had imagined possible. Rather than pressing his advantage immediately, Izuku used the brief reprieve to address the hidden child. Kota, you need to run back to the facility, he instructed, never taking his eyes off the impact site where Muscular was already beginning to stir. Tell Mandalay and the others that villains are attacking the camp. But what about you? Kota asked, emerging hesitantly from behind the rocks. I'll be right behind you, Izuku promised. The adaptation will continuing its analysis as Muscular extricated himself from the rubble. I just need to make sure he doesn't follow. Before Kota could respond, Muscular erupted from the debris with a roar of rage, his quirk manifesting even more dramatically than before. Muscle fibers completely encased his form, creating a monstrous silhouette barely recognizable as human. That hurt, you little shit, the villain bellowed, his single eye bloodshot with fury. I was going to play with you a bit longer, but now I'm just going to crush you into paste. He launched forward with renewed violence, but Izuku was prepared. The adaptation will had completed its analysis, optimizing his capabilities specifically for countering Muscular's particular brand of physical enhancement. As the villain's massive fist descended, Izuku activated 100% of One for All for a critical moment. The adaptation will flaring blindingly as it worked to contain and direct this overwhelming power safely. Oklahoma Smash, Izuku declared, naming a new technique born from his adaptations to this specific battle. His counterstrike connected perfectly with Muscular's attack, but instead of simply matching force with force, Izuku's adapted fingers found precise pressure points within the villain's muscle fibers, disrupting their cohesion at the moment of maximum extension. The result was devastating. Muscular's augmented form literally came apart at the seams, muscle fibers detaching from each other as the carefully maintained tension shattered under Izuku's precisely adapted attack. The villain's expression transformed from rage to shock as his primary weapon. His own body betrayed him. Before Muscular could recover, Izuku followed with a Wyoming smash that cratered the mountain path and left the villain embedded in solid rock, his consciousness fading as his quirk involuntarily deactivated. "You're Water Hose's kid, aren't you?" Muscular managed to rasp as Izuku approached, securing him with Black Whip. "That's why you were up here, protecting their brat." Kota stiffened at these words, his small hands clenching into fists. "What do you know about my parents?" Muscular's bloodied face twisted into a cruel smile despite his defeated state. "I know they died screaming when I ripped them apart. Weak heroes just like this one will be when..." His taunting was cut short by Izuku's precisely controlled chop to a pressure point on his neck, rendering him unconscious before he could continue his psychological torture. "He killed them," Kota whispered, shock and renewed grief evident in his voice. "That monster killed my parents?" Izuku knelt before the traumatized child, placing gentle hands on his shoulders. "And now he can't hurt anyone else," he said softly. "That's what heroes do, Kota. They stop the monsters so other children don't have to experience what you did." Tears welled in Kota's eyes, years of repressed grief suddenly finding expression. Without warning, he launched himself forward, small arms wrapping around Izuku's neck as sobs racked his tiny frame. The adaptation will manifested quietly behind Izuku as he held the crying child, its rotation gentle and protective rather than combat-oriented. In that moment, it seemed to respond not just to physical stimuli but to the profound emotional significance of what had transpired. "We need to get back to the others," Izuku said gently once Kota's sobs had subsided. "Can you be brave a little longer?" The boy nodded, wiping his eyes with determination that reflected his heroic heritage. "I can be brave." With Muscular securely bound and unconscious, Izuku lifted Kota onto his back and began making his way toward the facility, the adaptation will remaining manifested as it continued scanning for additional threats. They hadn't traveled far when urgent communication reached them through Mandalay's telepath quirk. "Attention all students, the training camp is under villain attack. Return to the facility immediately using designated evacuation routes. Class representatives account for all classmates. This is not a drill." Izuku's pace increased at this confirmation of his earlier suspicions. The gas he detected had indeed been preparation for a coordinated assault, likely by the League of Villains based on their previous targeting of UA students. As they approached the facility, the signs of battle became evident. Portions of the forest were ablaze with unnatural purple fire, earth golems created by Pixie Bob engaged with shadowy figures, and the sounds of combat echoed through the previously peaceful valley. "Kota, I need you to hold on tight," Izuku instructed, channeling 65% of One for All's power as they reached the edge of the conflict zone. "We're going to move very fast to get you somewhere safe." With the child secured, Izuku activated full cowling at maximum sustainable output, his enhanced speed allowing him to navigate the chaotic battlefield while avoiding direct confrontation. His priority was delivering Kota to safety before rejoining the defense effort. He located Mandalay engaged in combat with a villain whose razor-sharp teeth suggested a mutation-type quirk. With precise application of Black Whip, Izuku momentarily restrained the villain, creating an opening for Mandalay to deliver a decisive blow. "Midoriya!" she exclaimed, relief evident when she spotted her nephew secured on his back. "Kota, thank goodness, he's safe," Izuku confirmed, carefully transferring the boy to her. "Muscular has been neutralized and secured on the mountain path. But there are more villains in the forest." Mandalay's expression reflected both gratitude and professional concern. The attack is coordinated, at least 12 villains that we've identified so far. They seem to be targeting specific students rather than attacking indiscriminately. This information aligned with Muscular's earlier comment about taking Bakugo as a souvenir. They're after Kaken, Izuku realized aloud. Do you know where he is? Last report had him with Todoroki and Tokoyami near the Eastern Training Ground, Mandalay replied. But communications have been disrupted. I'll find them, Izuku promised. The adaptation will expanding as he prepared to re-enter combat conditions. Kota, stay with Mandalay. You'll be safe with her. The boy nodded, his expression having transformed from earlier resentment to something like awe. Be careful, he said simply, and thank you for stopping him. With a reassuring nod, Izuku reactivated full cowling and launched himself toward the eastern sector, danger sense guiding him toward the most significant threats. The adaptation will continue its protective rotation, now fully visible even to distant observers as a manifestation of his heightened combat readiness. He encountered Pixie Bob first, finding the usually energetic hero unconscious and injured, being dragged away by a villain with a lizard-like appearance. Without hesitation, Izuku intervened, a perfectly calibrated Detroit smash sending the villain crashing into the underbrush. After confirming Pixie Bob was alive though injured, Izuku secured her in a defensible position before continuing toward the eastern grounds where his classmates were reportedly engaged with enemy forces. The scene he encountered was chaotic, Todoroki creating ice barriers to protect injured classmates while Tokoyami struggled to control Dark Shadow, which had grown to monstrous proportions in the forest shadows. Nearby, Bakugo and Kendo stood back to back, fending off attacks from multiple directions. Izuku's arrival shifted the battle's momentum immediately. The adaptation wheel, now fully manifested and rotating with deadly purpose, processed the complex battlefield situation with unprecedented efficiency. His body moved with fluid precision, delivering targeted strikes that neutralized 3 villains in rapid succession. Izuku, Kendo called, relief evident in her voice. Thereafter Bakugo, some warp gate guy almost got him twice already. This confirmed Izuku's fears. The League was specifically targeting Bakugo, likely due to his explosive power and potential for villainous redirection. We need to get everyone back to the facility, Izuku responded, joining their defensive formation. Mandalay and Tiger are establishing a secure perimeter there. Easier said than done, nerd, Bakugo growled, though his usual hostility was tempered by the severity of their situation. These bastards keep coming, and Birdbrain's quirk is going berserk in the darkness. Assessing quickly, Izuku noted that Tokoyami's Dark Shadow had indeed grown to dangerous proportions, lashing out at both villains and classmates as its user struggled to maintain control. Todoroki, we need light to help Tokoyami, he called. Can you create controlled flames without compromising our defenses? Todoroki nodded grimly, adjusting his position to generate enough fire to subdue Dark Shadow without leaving their defensive perimeter vulnerable. The strategy worked. Dark Shadow gradually diminished to manageable size, allowing Tokoyami to rejoin their group with apologetic composure. We move together, Izuku instructed, taking natural command of the situation. Defensive formation with Bakugo in the center since he's their primary target. Todoroki, maintain illumination to prevent Dark Shadow from re-emerging. Kendo, your enlarged hands provide our front guard. I'll take rear defense. Ready? The group had just begun their tactical withdrawal when a familiar purple mist materialized nearby, Kurogiri's distinctive warp gate opening to reveal multiple figures emerging from its depths. There you are, Katsuki Bakugo, a disembodied voice called from within the mist. Our master has taken quite an interest in your potential. Like hell, Bakugo snarled, explosions crackling from his palms as he prepared to defend himself. Before anyone could react further, a new figure lunged from the forest shadows, slender, feminine, with disturbing intensity in her eyes and a blade clutched in each hand. Katsuki! She squealed with unnerving enthusiasm. Come play with us. Izuku's danger sense flared intensely, the adaptation wheel spinning rapidly as it assessed this new threat. The female villain's movement patterns suggested advanced combat training, while her mannerisms indicated psychological instability that made her actions difficult to predict. As she closed on their position, Izuku intercepted with precisely calculated force, a Delaware smash creating an air pressure wave that disrupted her charge without potentially lethal direct contact. Toga, focus on the mission, another voice called from near the warp gate, Mr. Compress, based on his distinctive mask and formal attire. "We're here for extraction, not your personal entertainment." The collaborative defense of Class 1A proved impressively effective, with each student applying their training to counter these professional villains. Todoroki created ice walls to block direct approaches. Tokoyami used the now-controlled Dark Shadow for precision strikes. Kendo's enlarged hands deflected attacks while creating openings for Bakugo's explosions. Throughout this coordinated defense, Izuku's adaptations continued evolving, the wheel behind him processing each villain's unique combat style and developing increasingly effective countermeasures. His movements became more efficient with each exchange, his strikes more precisely targeted to exploit specific weaknesses. The tides seemed to be turning in their favor when disaster struck from an unexpected quarter. A new villain emerged from the forest, one whose quirk allowed him to generate massive amounts of sleeping gas. Before anyone could react, the area was flooded with the soporific substance. "Don't breathe it in," Izuku warned, the adaptation while flaring as his respiratory system rapidly developed filtration capabilities. But the warning came too late for most of his classmates. One by one, they succumbed to the powerful sedative effect, their combat effectiveness drastically reduced as consciousness began to fade. Only Bakugo, whose explosive quirk naturally created air currents that temporarily dispersed the gas around him, remained fully alert alongside Izuku. "Damn it!" Bakugo snarled, witnessing their defensive perimeter collapse as Todoroki and the others fought unsuccessfully against the gas's effects. "We need to move, Deku. Now!" Izuku made a split-second decision, deploying Black Whip to secure his semi-conscious classmates while simultaneously activating Float to gain altitude above the gas cloud. "I can carry everyone," he called to Bakugo. "We need to reach higher ground." But as he began elevating the group, Mr. Compress made his move, his compression quirk activating as he touched Bakugo's shoulder, instantly transforming the explosive student into a small marble that he deftly caught between his fingers. "Target secured," the masked villain announced with theatrical flourish. "Kurogiri, our exit if you please." "Bakugo!" Izuku shouted, immediately releasing his classmates to stable positions as he launched himself toward Mr. Compress with devastating speed. The adaptation will expanded dramatically, its rotation becoming almost blinding as Izuku channeled 80% of One for All, dangerously close to his sustainable maximum. "Give him back!" he roared, a Wyoming smash creating a localized shockwave that disrupted the villain's formation. The attack caught Mr. Compress off guard, his theatrically graceful movements unable to completely evade Izuku's enhanced speed. A precisely targeted strike connected with the villain's hand, forcing him to release several compressed objects, including the marble containing Bakugo. As the marble bounced across the forest floor, both Izuku and Toga lunged for it simultaneously. Izuku's adapted reflexes gave him the advantage, fingers closing around the marble a fraction of a second before Toga's blade would have pierced his hand. "No fair!" the deranged villain pouted, her blade shifting trajectory to target Izuku's throat instead. The adaptation will process this threat instantaneously, Izuku's neck muscles hardening to an almost armor-like consistency just as the blade made contact. The weapon skidded harmlessly across his adapted skin, leaving Toga staring in fascinated delight. "Oh, you're special," she crooned, eyes widening with disturbing interest. "I want to see you bleed even more now." Before she could attack again, a massive explosion erupted from behind them, Bakugo returning to his normal form as Izuku's grip on the compressed marble loosened during the exchange. His expression was one of pure rage as he unleashed his quirk at maximum output, creating distance between himself and the gathered villains. "I don't need your damn rescue, Deku," he snarled, though his tactical repositioning alongside Izuku rather than away suggested he understood the gravity of their situation. Kurogiri's warp gate expanded as Mr. Compress regrouped with the other League members. "This extraction has become unnecessarily complicated," the warp villain observed dispassionately. "Perhaps we should retreat and formulate a new approach." "No!" Toga protested, her disturbing enthusiasm undiminished. "I want to play more with the adaptation boy." As the villains debated their next move, Izuku and Bakugo used the momentary reprieve to assess their tactical position. Their classmates remained incapacitated by the sleeping gas, which was gradually dispersing but would continue affecting them for several minutes. The two of them stood alone against the League's extraction team, with unknown numbers of additional villains potentially lurking in the surrounding forest. "They're not leaving without you," Izuku stated quietly to Bakugo, and we can't maintain this standoff indefinitely. So what's your brilliant plan? Bakugo demanded, palms crackling with ready explosions as he tracked the villain's movements. The adaptation will expanded behind Izuku as he rapidly formulated and discarded strategic options. I'm going to create an opening, he finally decided. When I do, you need to head straight for the facility. Aizawa and the Pussycats have established a defensive perimeter there. And leave you to fight these psychos alone? Even I'm not that much of an asshole, Deku. I'm not planning to fight them all, Izuku clarified. Just delay them long enough for reinforcements to arrive. My danger sense indicates professional heroes approaching from the southwest, probably responding to the facility's emergency signal. Bakugo's expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced, but before he could respond, the villains made their decision. Several attacked simultaneously, Toga lunging with her blades, Mr. Compress advancing with hands outstretched to use his quirk, and a new villain generating what appeared to be clones of himself to surround their position. Now! Izuku shouted, channeling 100% of One for All for a brief, critical moment. The adaptation will flared blindingly as he brought his hands together in a thunderous clap that created a shockwave powerful enough to disrupt all approaching villains simultaneously. The force cratered the ground beneath him and temporarily disoriented everyone in the immediate vicinity, friend and foe alike. In that crucial moment of confusion, Izuku deployed Black Whip to launch Bakugo forcefully away from the confrontation, propelling him toward the facility with enough momentum to clear the immediate danger zone. DKU, you idiot! Bakugo roared as he was catapulted through the air, unable to counter the momentum without risking a dangerous landing. With Bakugo temporarily secured, Izuku turned his full attention to delaying the League members. The adaptation will continue its complex rotation, processing multiple threats simultaneously as he engaged Toga and the clone-generating villain in close combat while using float and controlled air pressure waves to keep Mr. Compress at a distance. His adapted form moved with extraordinary efficiency, each motion precisely calibrated to counter specific threats while conserving energy for sustained combat. When Toga's blade sought vulnerable points, his skin hardened just before impact. When the clones attempted to overwhelm him with numbers, his perception accelerated to track each individual threat. From a distance, Kurogiri observed this display with calculating interest. The reports about this one's adaptations were not exaggerated, he noted to Mr. Compress. He improves continuously during combat, developing counters to each villain's specific abilities. Fascinating from an academic perspective, Mr. Compress acknowledged, readying himself for another attempt. But ultimately irrelevant. We have our mission parameters. The warp villain nodded, his misty form expanding dramatically. Indeed, and sometimes discretion dictates a change in approach. Without warning, Kurogiri's warp gate expanded not toward Izuku but in the direction Bakugo had been launched, attempting to intercept his trajectory before he could reach the facility's defensive perimeter. Izuku's danger sense flared violently at this development. The adaptation will processing this new threat pattern with urgent priority. "No!" he shouted, immediately disengaging from his current opponents to launch himself toward the expanding warp gate. Using One for All at 85%, dangerously close to his sustainable limit, Izuku raced against Kurogiri's expanding portal, the adaptation will flaring brilliantly as it pushed his speed beyond previous thresholds. He could see Bakugo's form approaching the edge of the warp gate's reach, propelled by the momentum of Izuku's earlier intervention. In a desperate gambit, Izuku deployed Black Whip at maximum extension, the dark tendrils stretching toward Bakugo with unprecedented range. At the same instant, he activated evasion, releasing stored kinetic energy to boost his forward momentum beyond what even One for All alone could provide. The resulting burst of speed was spectacular, allowing Izuku to close the distance just as Bakugo's trajectory would have taken him into the Warp Gate's event horizon. Black Whip secured around Bakugo's waist, pulling him sharply downward out of the portal's path. "I said I don't need your help," Bakugo snarled, though his expression suggested a complex mixture of emotions beneath the characteristic anger. "Noted," Izuku responded tersely, maintaining his grip on Bakugo as they landed roughly in a forest clearing several hundred meters from both the villains and the facility. The momentary reprieve was short-lived. Kurogiri's warp gate repositioned with disturbing speed, multiple portals opening around their new location as the remaining League members emerged in a coordinated encirclement pattern. "This is becoming tiresome," Mr. Compress observed with theatrical weariness. Perhaps a more direct approach is warranted. Before either student could respond, a massive portal opened directly above them. Not Kurogiri's work, but a separate gateway from which descended a hulking figure with exposed brain matter and a beak-like face. An artificial human weapon known as a Nomu. Unlike the one from the USJ incident, this Nomu appeared sleeker, with obvious modifications for speed rather than raw strength. It moved with unnatural quickness, closing on Bakugo before either student could fully process its arrival. Izuku's danger sense flared violently as the adaptation wheel expanded to its largest manifestation yet, processing this new threat with urgent priority. Without conscious thought, his body interposed itself between Bakugo and the approaching Nomu, one for all channeled to maximum sustainable output. The impact when the Nomu struck was catastrophic. Even with his continuously adapting defenses, Izuku felt ribs crack and internal organs compress under the tremendous force. The adaptation wheel flared blindingly as it worked to mitigate damage while simultaneously developing countermeasures against this new opponent. "Deku!" Bakugo shouted, genuine concern breaking through his usual hostility as he witnessed the devastating impact. Despite the grievous damage, Izuku remained standing, the adaptation wheel pulsing with renewed intensity as his body rapidly reconfigured to address the Nomu's specific attack pattern. Broken ribs realigned and reinforced. Damaged tissue regenerated with unprecedented speed. Musculature reconfigured for improved shock absorption. "Get to the facility," Izuku managed through gritted teeth, already positioning for a counterattack despite his injuries. "I'll hold them off, like hell," Bakugo responded, explosions crackling from his palms as he prepared to engage alongside his rival. "I'm not leaving just to get ambushed again." Before their standoff could continue, multiple ice walls suddenly erupted around their position. Todoroki had recovered from the sleeping gas and located them, his ice creating a momentary barrier between them and their attackers. "Both of you need to withdraw immediately," Todoroki instructed as he joined them, his heterochromatic eyes assessing the situation with tactical precision. "The pro heroes are almost here. Aizawa-sensei sent me to guide you back to the secure perimeter." The Nomu shattered through the nearest ice wall with disturbing ease, its modified form apparently including enhanced strength alongside its speed advantages. Mr. Compress and Toga followed through the breach, with Kurogiri's misty form expanding to prevent escape from the other directions. "No more delays," Mr. Compress declared, his casual theatrical manner giving way to more serious purpose. "Secure the explosive boy. Kill the others if necessary." The adaptation wheel behind Izuku spun with deadly purpose as he assessed their deteriorating tactical position. With Todoroki's arrival, they had gained significant combat capability, but the villain's determination had clearly increased as well. More concerning was the Nomu, whose artificial nature made it difficult for the adaptation wheel to develop effective countermeasures. Its attack patterns lacked the consistency of human combatants. Just as the situation seemed to be reaching a critical tipping point, a massive explosion erupted from the forest edge. Not Bakugo's quirk, but something far more powerful. Trees splintered and earth heaved as a new figure entered the clearing, moving with professional purpose. "Get away from my students," the unmistakable voice of All Might thundered across the battlefield, his imposing figure silhouetted against the forest fires as he arrived at what appeared to be maximum speed. Relief washed over the students at the symbol of peace's arrival, though Izuku noted with concern that his mentor was already showing subtle signs of strain, indicating he had been in his muscle form for an extended period before arriving. The villain's reaction to All Might's appearance was immediate and predictable. Toga retreated toward Kurogiri's nearest portal, her disturbing enthusiasm temporarily subdued by genuine survival instinct. Mr. Compress hesitated momentarily before following suit, recognizing the futility of confronting Japan's greatest hero without significant backup. Only the Nomu remained fully engaged, its program directives apparently prioritizing combat over self-preservation. It launched toward All Might with the same unnatural speed it had demonstrated against Izuku, artificial muscles propelling its modified form with deadly purpose. "I don't think so," All Might declared, meeting the charge with a precisely calculated Carolina smash that sent the artificial human weapon crashing through multiple trees before embedding it in the distant mountainside. With the immediate threat neutralized, All Might turned his attention to the retreating villains. "Your attack has failed," he announced with the unwavering confidence that had made him the symbol of peace. "Surrender now, or face the consequences." Kurogiri's misty form expanded, creating multiple escape portals for the remaining League members. Another time, symbol of peace. The warp villain intoned calmly. Today's operation was merely reconnaissance. Before All Might could prevent their escape, the various portals closed, leaving only the damaged forest and the distant, embedded Nomu as evidence of the confrontation. With the immediate danger past, Izuku allowed his defensive posture to relax slightly. The adaptation will gradually diminishing as it shifted from combat readiness to recovery mode. The damaged tissues throughout his body continued their accelerated healing, though the process was visibly taxing his reserves. Young Midoriya, your injuries. All Might began, concern evident despite his perpetually smiling facade. I'm healing already, Izuku assured him, though the strain in his voice belied the casual dismissal. The adaptations are addressing the internal damage. All Might nodded, understanding the unique nature of Izuku's recovery capabilities better than most. And you too? He inquired, turning to Bakugo and Todoroki. Fine, Bakugo muttered, his usual hostility tempered by the severity of what had transpired. No thanks to the League of Freaks trying to kidnap me. They specifically targeted Bakugo, Todoroki explained more formally. It appeared to be their primary objective rather than general destruction or confrontation. This information drew a grave nod from All Might as he guided the students toward the facility. This was a coordinated attack with specific goals, he confirmed. Not merely a response to the USJ incident, but something more strategic. As they rejoined the defensive perimeter established around the main facility, the full extent of the attack became apparent. While most students had survived with minor injuries, several, including Pixie Bob, required serious medical attention. The facility itself showed significant damage from various quirk applications, and portions of the surrounding forest continued to burn with unnatural purple flames that resisted conventional suppression methods. Mandalay greeted them at the perimeter, Kota remaining firmly by her side with newfound determination in his young eyes. "Thank goodness you're all safe," she exclaimed with professional relief. "The villain who creates that sleeping gas has been apprehended, along with 2 others. But it seems the leadership escaped." All Might nodded grimly. "Their objective appears to have been young Bakugo. They may attempt similar operations in the future." As medical personnel attended to the injured and heroes secured the perimeter against potential counterattacks, Izuku found himself approached by Kota, whose expression had transformed dramatically from their first encounter. "You really did it?" the boy said quietly, awe evident in his voice. "You beat the villain who killed my parents." Izuku knelt to meet Kota at eye level, the adaptation while manifesting briefly behind him in a gentle, protective rotation. "Heroes keep their promises," he said simply. "And sometimes, that means making sure villains can't hurt anyone else." Kota nodded solemnly, processing this perspective with remarkable maturity for his age. I think I understand better now. Why they did what they did. Why you do what you do." A small hand extended toward Izuku with formal determination. "Thank you for stopping him," Kota said with quiet dignity. "Maybe heroes aren't so bad after all." As Izuku accepted the handshake, the adaptation will expanded slightly, seemingly responding to the emotional significance of this moment as much as to physical stimuli. For all its combat capabilities, the wheel's true purpose was adaptation in its broadest sense, response to all challenges, whether physical, tactical, or moral. The night progressed with emergency services arriving to address injuries and damage, while police secured the apprehended villains for transport to high-security facilities. Given the severity of the attack and its apparent targeting of specific students, UA administration made the decision to terminate the training camp early, arranging for all students to return to campus where security could be more effectively maintained. As they prepared for departure the following morning, Izuku found himself contemplating the escalating pattern of villain activities. From the USJ incident to this coordinated attack, the League of Villains was becoming increasingly bold in their operations against UA specifically. More concerning was their apparent interest in Bakugo, suggesting they saw potential to turn his aggressive nature toward villainous purposes. The adaptation will manifested briefly as Izuku considered these implications, processing not combat data but strategic patterns. Whatever came next would require more than physical adaptation. It would demand evolution of perspective, strategy, and perhaps even the fundamental relationship between heroes and those they protected. As dawn broke over the damaged training facility, Izuku joined his classmates on the buses that would return them to UA, His body largely recovered thanks to the continuous adaptations, but his mind heavy with the implications of what had transpired. The wheel's manifestation had become more persistent, remaining visible for longer periods even outside combat situations, a sign that his powers were continuing to evolve in response to escalating challenges. The journey back to UA passed in somber silence, a stark contrast to the excited chatter that had characterized their departure just days earlier. Each student processed the attack in their own way, some through quiet reflection, others through subdued conversations about what they had experienced. Bakugo remained notably isolated, his usual explosive personality temporarily subdued by the realization that he had been specifically targeted. Though he maintained his characteristic scowl, there was something different in his demeanor, a thoughtfulness that suggested he was reassessing certain assumptions. As they approached UA's campus, Izuku's danger sense remained quiet, but the adaptation will continued its subtle rotation behind him, preparing for challenges yet to come. The atmosphere in Class 1A's temporary dormitory was subdued as students gathered the morning after their return from the training camp. Despite physical injuries healing under Recovery Girl's expert care, the psychological impact of the coordinated villain attack lingered heavily in everyone's consciousness. Aizawa stood before them, his perpetually exhausted expression somehow more severe than usual. "I understand you're all processing what happened," he began without preamble. "But we need to address the implications directly." He activated the room's display screen, showing news coverage of the attack. Headlines emphasized the unprecedented nature of villains specifically targeting hero students, with particular focus on the League's apparent interest in Bakugo. "The media is already speculating about why Bakugo was targeted," Aizawa continued, his tone carefully neutral. "Most theories center around his aggressive fighting style and the potential for villainous redirection." Bakugo, seated near the back of the room, maintained a stony silence, though the tension in his posture was evident to everyone. "I want to be absolutely clear," Aizawa stated firmly, addressing the entire class but looking directly at Bakugo. "UA has complete faith in all of you and your commitment to heroism, regardless of your individual temperaments or fighting styles. The League's targeting strategy says nothing about your character and everything about their desperation to undermine hero society." This direct acknowledgement seemed to release some of the tension in the room, particularly around Bakugo, whose rigid posture relaxed marginally. However, Aizawa continued, expression growing more serious. "The attack demonstrates that the League has detailed intelligence about our students, operations, and potentially future activities. Until we identify and address these security vulnerabilities, all off-campus activities will be suspended, and additional protective measures will be implemented." These protective measures, as Aizawa explained, included accelerated completion of dedicated student dormitories on campus, enhanced security protocols for all facilities, and continuous professional hero patrols of the surrounding area. While these precautions were necessary, they also represented a sobering acknowledgement that UA, once considered an unassailable bastion of hero training, was now a confirmed target for organized villain activity. After Aizawa's briefing concluded, students dispersed to various activities, processing the new reality in their own ways. Izuku found himself approached by Todoroki, whose heterochromatic gaze carried unusual intensity. "Midoriya," Todoroki began quietly, ensuring their conversation remained private. "There's something about the attack that's been bothering me." "What is it?" Izuku prompted when Todoroki hesitated. "The coordination, the precision, the specific targeting." Todoroki's voice remained calm, but concern was evident in his normally impassive expression. "This wasn't a standard villain operation. It felt professional, almost like something my father would design if he were planning a strategic extraction." The implication was disturbing, not that Endeavor was involved, but that the League had access to strategic planning capabilities comparable to top professional heroes. The adaptation will manifested briefly behind Izuku as he processed this assessment, analyzing tactical patterns rather than combat data. "You think they have inside information," Izuku concluded, keeping his voice low. "Not just about our quirks and capabilities, but about professional hero operational strategies." Todoroki nodded grimly, which suggests either a traitor with high-level access or, he hesitated before completing the thought, or they have resources we haven't identified yet. Possibly both. This conversation lingered in Izuku's mind throughout the day, the adaptation will occasionally manifesting as he considered various implications and possibilities. If Todoroki's assessment was accurate, the threat represented by the League of Villains was significantly greater than most people, including many pros currently recognized. That evening, restlessness drove Izuku to seek out friends for tactical discussion. He found Ida, Uraraka, and Kendo gathered in the dormitory's common area, their expressions suggesting they too were struggling with unresolved concerns about recent events. "I can't stop thinking about why they targeted Bakugo specifically," Uraraka admitted as Izuku joined them. "There are students with more conventionally villainous quirks, if that's what they were looking for. It's psychological warfare," Ida suggested, his analytical mind approaching the problem from multiple angles. Bakugo's victory at the sports festival made him highly visible. Converting UA's champion into a villain would deliver a devastating blow to public confidence in hero institutions. Kendo nodded thoughtfully. Plus, his combat capabilities are extraordinary. If they could somehow turn him or force him to their side, he'd represent a significant offensive asset. But Bakugo would never join villains willingly, Izuku stated with absolute certainty. Whatever his flaws, his determination to become a top hero is unquestionable, which suggests they have some means of coercion in mind, Ida concluded darkly, making his protection all the more critical. Their discussion continued late into the evening, analyzing the attack from various perspectives and considering potential countermeasures should similar incidents occur in the future. Throughout this tactical planning, the adaptation will maintain a subtle presence behind Izuku, processing strategic concepts alongside his conscious mind. The following morning brought unexpected developments. As students gathered for breakfast, news alerts began appearing on multiple devices simultaneously. The hero community was mobilizing for a major operation, with significant activity detected in Kamino Ward. "That's unusual," Kendo observed, scrolling through available information. "They don't normally announce operations in advance, and certainly not with this level of professional hero involvement." "Look at the roster," Todoroki noted, indicating the list of confirmed participants. All Might, Endeavor, Best Jeanist, Edgeshot, Gang Orca, Kamui Woods. They're deploying multiple top 10 heroes simultaneously. Izuku's analytical mind immediately recognized the implications. "This isn't a standard operation," he concluded. The adaptation will manifesting briefly as he processed the information. With this roster, they're either expecting extraordinary resistance or they know exactly where to find the League of Villains. Ida completed the thought, expression grave. "Including their leadership." The class fell silent as they absorbed this possibility. After months of operating with impunity, it appeared the League might finally face coordinated opposition from Japan's top heroes. But something about the situation still felt incomplete to Izuku, some critical element missing from the tactical picture. "We should be watching this," he decided, moving toward the dormitory's common area where a large screen could display news coverage. If they've really located the League's hideout, this could be historic. As students gathered around the screen, live helicopter footage showed multiple pro heroes converging on an unassuming warehouse district in Kamino Ward. The operation appeared methodical and coordinated, with Kamui Woods establishing perimeter security while Gang Orca and other strength-oriented heroes moved into strategic positions. "Where's All Might?" Uraraka wondered aloud, scanning the footage for the distinctive silhouette of the symbol of peace. "Probably being held in reserve," Ida suggested. "His arrival tends to trigger immediate villain responses. They may be attempting to secure the area before he makes his presence known." As they watched the unfolding operation, Izuku found his attention drawn to Bakugo, who stood slightly apart from the group, eyes fixed on the screen with unusual intensity. There was something in his expression beyond mere interest, attention that suggested personal investment in the outcome. The adaptation will manifested behind Izuku as he considered Bakugo's reaction, processing emotional cues alongside tactical data. Something wasn't aligning properly, some element of the situation creating cognitive dissonance that triggered adaptive response. On screen, the operation accelerated dramatically as Edgeshot infiltrated the target building using his foldabody quirk, followed immediately by a coordinated breach from multiple heroes simultaneously. The camera struggled to capture the ensuing action inside the structure, with only occasional flashes of quirk usage visible through windows and the partially collapsed roof. "They're being thorough," Todoroki observed, professional assessment evident in his tone. "This isn't just an arrest operation. They're securing evidence and intelligence simultaneously." Minutes later, heroes emerged escorting several restrained individuals, members of the League of Villains based on their distinctive appearances, though notably absent were Shigaraki, Kurogiri, and the more prominent leaders. "Wait," Izuku said suddenly, rising from his seat as realization struck with the force of physical impact. The adaptation will expanded dramatically behind him, rotating with urgent purpose as it processed a critical insight. "This is wrong. The timing is wrong." "What do you mean?" Kendo questioned, turning from the screen to observe Izuku's intensifying concern. "The League attempted to capture Bakugo less than 48 hours ago," Izuku explained, thoughts racing ahead of his words. "Now suddenly the heroes have perfect intelligence on their hideout location? That's not how intelligence operations work. There's no way they developed actionable information that quickly unless..." His eyes widened as the pieces aligned with disturbing clarity. "Unless this isn't their actual headquarters. It's a decoy." Bakugo's head snapped toward Izuku, crimson eyes narrowing as he processed this assessment. "A diversion," he concluded, reaching the same realization. "They're pulling the top heroes to one location while planning something else." Izuku nodded grimly, the adaptation was spinning rapidly as it integrated this strategic insight. "And based on recent patterns, that something else likely involves me," Bakugo finished flatly. "They're still coming for me." This realization galvanized the students into immediate action. Ida activated emergency communication protocols to alert UA staff about their concerns, while Todoroki attempted to reach his father directly to warn about the potential diversion strategy. All available faculty are either participating in the Kamino operation or securing other UA facilities, Ida reported after attempting multiple communication channels. "We're on our own for at least the next hour." "The dormitory security systems are active," Yaoyorozu contributed, having checked the building's defensive status. "But if the League launches a coordinated attack similar to the training camp, standard automated defenses might not be sufficient." Izuku's mind raced through tactical options. The adaptation will continuing its analytical rotation as it processed potential threat vectors and response strategies. "We need to relocate Bakugo to a secure position that doesn't match any predictable pattern," he concluded. "Somewhere the League wouldn't anticipate." "The support department workshops," Kendo suggested. "They have additional security measures for storing experimental equipment, and the layout isn't documented in standard UA materials." This proposal received general agreement, and preparations began immediately. Yaoyorozu created specialized communication devices to maintain contact between student groups, while Todoroki and Kirishima established a defensive perimeter around their evacuation route. Izuku and Ida would accompany Bakugo directly, providing primary protection during the relocation. Surprisingly, Bakugo offered no resistance to these protective measures. His usual combative rejection of assistance was notably absent, replaced by grim acknowledgement of the tactical situation. "I'm not giving those League bastards the satisfaction," he stated simply when Kirishima expressed surprise at his cooperation. As they prepared to move, Izuku activated full cowling at 50%, a sustainable level that would allow for prolonged defense if necessary. The adaptation will manifested fully behind him, its rotation steady and purposeful as it prepared for potential combat conditions. Just as the relocation team reached the dormitory's exit corridor, Izuku's danger sense flared with unprecedented intensity. The adaptation will expanding dramatically as it processed an imminent threat of extraordinary magnitude. "Get down!" he shouted, tackling both Bakugo and Ida to the floor as the corridor wall exploded inward with catastrophic force. Through the dust and debris emerged a massive figure with exposed brain matter and multiple artificial augmentations. Another Nomu, but significantly larger and more heavily modified than those they had encountered previously. Behind it came additional figures. Toga with her manic smile and blood-stained blades, Mr. Compress with his theatrical mask and calculating posture, and most concerningly, the misty form of Kurogiri, whose warp capabilities made conventional defense nearly impossible. "We've come to collect our newest member," Mr. Compress announced with theatrical flourish, addressing Bakugo directly. "Our master was most disappointed by the previous failure." "Like hell," Bakugo snarled, explosive power crackling from his palms, as he prepared for combat alongside his classmates. What followed was a desperate defense against overwhelming force. The enhanced Nomu attacked with coordinated purpose rather than the mindless aggression of previous models, suggesting significant improvements to its control systems. Toga and Mr. Compress operated with disturbing synergy, creating openings for each other while Kurogiri's portals provided tactical repositioning that negated conventional defensive formations. Throughout this chaotic confrontation, Izuku's adaptations evolved at accelerated rates, the wheel behind him spinning with increasing complexity as it processed and countered multiple threat vectors simultaneously. His skin hardened against Toga's blades, his reflexes sharpened to track the Nomu's unnatural movement patterns, his sensory capabilities enhanced to detect Kurogiri's portal formations before they fully materialized. "We can't maintain this defense indefinitely," Ida shouted over the sounds of combat, his engines flaring as he intercepted an attack aimed at Bakugo. "We need reinforcements. Communications are being jammed," Yaoyorozu reported from her position near the dormitory security systems. "I can't reach any faculty or emergency services." The situation deteriorated further when a new portal opened directly above their position, revealing a figure that sent chills through every student present. Tamura Shigaraki himself, hands outstretched and decay quirk fully activated. "Enough playing around," the league's leader rasped, bloodshot eyes fixed on Bakugo with disturbing intensity. "We came for one thing only." As Shigaraki descended toward their defensive formation, Izuku made a split-second decision that would alter the course of events dramatically. Channeling 80% of One for All, dangerously close to his sustainable maximum, he launched himself directly at the descending villain, the adaptation while flaring brilliantly as it prepared his body for close-quarters combat with one of Japan's most dangerous criminals. "Detroit Smash!" Izuku roared, meeting Shigaraki's decay with overwhelming force. The impact created a shockwave that disrupted the entire battlefield, sending villains and students alike tumbling across the damaged dormitory. Only Bakugo remained properly anchored, having detonated controlled explosions to counter the pressure wave's effects. When visibility returned, Izuku stood between Shigaraki and his classmates, the adaptation will fully manifested and rotating with deadly purpose behind him. His right arm showed disturbing signs of decay where Shigaraki's quirk had made partial contact. Yet the damage was visibly reversing as his adaptations worked to counter the destruction of cellular structure. "The wheel kid," Shigaraki hissed, genuine annoyance in his voice as he reassessed the tactical situation. "Always in the way. That's what heroes do," Izuku responded simply, body already adapting specifically to counter Shigaraki's decay quirk. "We stand between villains and those they target." What followed was a protracted battle throughout the dormitory complex, with students coordinating remarkably effective defense despite being significantly outnumbered by professional villains. Todoroki's ice created temporary barriers that channeled enemy movements into kill zones, prepared by Yaoyorozu's created weapons. Kirishima and Kendo established physical defensive lines that protected less combat-oriented classmates while they contributed support capabilities. At the center of this defensive formation, Izuku and Bakugo fought back-to-back, their contrasting styles creating a surprisingly effective combination. Bakugo's explosions provided area denial and ranged attacks, while Izuku's continuously adapting form handled direct confrontations with the most dangerous opponents, particularly the enhanced Nomu, whose artificial nature made it especially challenging for conventional quirks to damage. Throughout the extended confrontation, the adaptation wheel behind Izuku evolved visibly, its rotation becoming more complex and its manifestation more substantial as it processed combat data at unprecedented rates. Each villain's unique attack patterns, quirk applications, and tactical tendencies were analyzed and countered with increasing efficiency. Despite this remarkable defensive effort, the situation remained fundamentally unsustainable. The villains had come with specific purpose and overwhelming force, while the students, however talented, were fighting without professional support or established tactical protocols. "We need to change the battlefield," Izuku realized aloud as he countered another of the Nomu's devastating attacks. "They've prepared specifically for this environment." "What are you suggesting?" Ida questioned, his costume showing significant damage from multiple engagements. "We can't abandon the defensive perimeter without exposing Bakugo." Before Izuku could respond, the tactical situation shifted dramatically. Kurogiri's portals suddenly expanded throughout the battlefield, creating escape routes for the villains rather than attack vectors. Mr. Compress and Toga immediately disengaged, retreating through the nearest portals while the enhanced Nomu provided covering action. "They're withdrawing?" Uraraka questioned, confusion evident in her voice. "Why now?" The answer came moments later as Shigaraki's voice carried across the damaged dormitory. "Change of plans," the league leader announced, his tone suggesting frustrated recalculation rather than defeat. Our master requires our presence elsewhere. As the remaining villains retreated through Kurogiri's portals, Izuku's danger sense remained active, suggesting the threat had diminished but not disappeared entirely. The adaptation will continue its protective rotation, processing this unexpected tactical development. "Something's wrong," Izuku stated once the immediate battle had concluded. "They had us outmatched. Why withdraw unless—" His words were interrupted by the dormitory's emergency broadcast system suddenly activating, overriding the villain's communication jamming. The screen displayed breaking news coverage that explained everything. The Kamino Ward operation had taken an unexpected turn. All Might had engaged a previously unseen opponent at a secondary location, several kilometers from the initial raid target. The footage showed catastrophic destruction throughout the district as two immensely powerful figures exchanged blows that shattered buildings and cratered streets. "Is that?" Uraraka whispered, horror evident in her voice as the camera zoomed in on All Might's opponent. Though few of the students had seen him before, there was no mistaking the distinctive appearance of Japan's most notorious villain. All for One, the shadowy leader behind the League of Villains, whose very existence had been considered legendary rather than factual by most of society. That's why they withdrew, Izuku realized. The adaptation will expanding dramatically as it processed the profound strategic implications. Their master called them back when All Might appeared at his location. The students watched in stunned silence as the battle unfolded on screen, the sheer scale of destruction testifying to the unbelievable power of both combatants. All Might, the symbol of peace and Japan's greatest hero, was fighting with everything he had, yet showing signs of unprecedented strain against this formidable opponent. Izuku felt his heart rate accelerate as he observed his mentor's struggle. All Might was fighting not just a powerful villain but the fundamental nemesis of One for All itself, the original wielder of All for One and architect of countless atrocities throughout Japan's history. And based on the visible evidence, the symbol of peace was not decisively winning this confrontation. "We need to help," Izuku stated suddenly, the adaptation will flaring with urgent purpose behind him. "All Might needs backup. Are you insane?" Kaminari exclaimed, voicing what many were thinking. "That's All Might fighting what looks like the final boss of villainy. What could we possibly contribute? We just get in the way," Todoroki added more pragmatically, though concern for Izuku was evident in his usually impassive expression. Professional heroes are undoubtedly converging on the location already, but Izuku's attention had shifted to Bakugo, who was watching the broadcast with uncharacteristic intensity, his expression suggesting internal conflict of unprecedented magnitude. "You're thinking it too, aren't you?" Izuku asked quietly, recognizing the look of someone calculating risk against moral imperative. Bakugo's crimson eyes met Izuku's green ones with rare directness. "If that monster is the one behind the League, behind the attacks on UA, behind the attempt to take me, then we have a responsibility," Izuku completed the thought, the adaptation will spinning with increased urgency behind him. After a moment's tense silence, Bakugo nodded once, a gesture that contained more genuine respect than he had ever shown his childhood rival. "Let's go." The decision was met with predictable opposition from their classmates, with Ida particularly vehement about the recklessness of inserting students into a battle between Japan's greatest hero and its most notorious villain. But something had fundamentally shifted in the relationship between Izuku and Bakugo, a temporary alliance born of shared recognition that some moments transcend conventional protocols. "We're not asking for permission or support," Bakugo stated with uncharacteristic calmness to their concerned classmates. "But we're going. I have responsibilities as class president," Ida began, his expression torn between duty and friendship. "I can't endorse this reckless." "Then don't endorse it," Izuku interrupted gently. "Report it as unauthorized action if you need to. But we're going, Ida. Some things are bigger than school rules." Before further debate could delay them, Izuku and Bakugo departed the damaged dormitory, using their respective quirks to travel at maximum sustainable speed toward Kamino Ward. Float and Black Whip combined with full cowling allowed Izuku to traverse urban landscapes with unprecedented efficiency, while Bakugo's explosive propulsion enabled him to maintain comparable velocity despite their contrasting mobility methods. The adaptation will remain fully manifested behind Izuku throughout this journey, processing not just physical requirements for high-speed travel but strategic considerations for the confrontation ahead. All for One represented an opponent beyond anything Izuku had faced, a villain whose century of experience and multiple stolen quirks would challenge even his extraordinary adaptive capabilities. As they approached Kamino Ward, the scale of destruction became increasingly apparent. Entire city blocks had been reduced to rubble by the clash of titans, with emergency services struggling to evacuate civilians from the expanding danger zone. Professional heroes maintained a perimeter around the primary battlefield, focusing on rescue operations rather than direct engagement with the central conflict. From their elevated approach vector, Izuku and Bakugo could see the heart of the confrontation, all might and all for one, trading devastating blows that reshaped the urban landscape with each impact. More concerning was All Might's visible condition. The symbol of peace showed unprecedented damage, his normally immaculate costume torn and bloodied from wounds that would have incapacitated any other hero. "He's struggling," Bakugo observed grimly as they paused on a rooftop overlooking the battlefield. "All Might never struggles." Izuku nodded, the adaptation will expanding as it analyzed the distant combat patterns. All for One has multiple quirks. You can see different abilities activating during each exchange. All Might is fighting not just overwhelming power but unprecedented versatility. "So what's the plan?" Bakugo demanded, palms crackling with ready explosions. "We can't just charge in without strategy against something like that." The fact that Bakugo, normally the epitome of reckless assault, was advocating for strategic consideration demonstrated the severity of the situation. The adaptation will spun rapidly behind Izuku as he assessed their limited options. Direct confrontation would be counterproductive, Izuku concluded after brief analysis. All Might needs to maintain focus on All for One without worrying about protecting us. But we might be able to provide tactical support without direct engagement. He pointed towards several areas where damaged buildings threatened to collapse onto evacuation routes. If we secure those structural weaknesses, the professional heroes can focus more resources on supporting All Might rather than civilian protection. Bakugo nodded in reluctant agreement. "Fine, we stabilize the battlefield perimeter first. But if All Might starts going down, all bets are off." They separated to address different sectors, using their quirks with remarkable precision for destructive powers. Bakugo's controlled explosions fusing unstable materials into temporary support structures, while Izuku's combination of Black Whip and enhanced strength reinforced critical load-bearing elements. Throughout these efforts, Izuku maintained constant awareness of the central confrontation. The adaptation will continuously processing combat data even from this distance. All Might was fighting with undiminished determination, but something was wrong with his power output. Fluctuations that suggested internal struggle rather than tactical variation. As Izuku completed stabilizing a particularly precarious apartment complex, allowing emergency services to evacuate the remaining civilians, his enhanced hearing captured a concerning exchange from the primary battlefield. "Your time is running out, symbol of peace." All for One's modulated voice carried through the destruction with disturbing clarity. "The embers of One for All are fading. Soon, there will be nothing left but the hollow shell of Toshinori Yagi." The implications of this statement sent chills through Izuku's body. All for One knew All Might's true identity, and more critically, understood the time limit affecting his muscle form. This wasn't merely a physical confrontation but an endurance test specifically designed to outlast All Might's sustainable transformation period. The adaptation will flared with urgent purpose as Izuku processed this strategic revelation. If All for One was deliberately extending the battle to exploit All Might's time limit, then support operations at the perimeter weren't sufficient response. The symbol of peace needed direct intervention before his power failed completely. Activating his communicator, Izuku contacted Bakugo with this critical insight. "All for One knows about All Might's limitation," he explained urgently. "He's deliberately prolonging the fight to force reversion to his true form." "Shit." Bakugo's response was uncharacteristically subdued, understanding the implications immediately. "So what now? Direct intervention after all." "Not yet," Izuku decided. "The adaptation will continuing its analytical rotation. But we need to position for immediate support if his transformation begins to fail. Complete your current stabilization and rendezvous at my location." As Bakugo acknowledged this instruction, Izuku turned his full attention to the central battle, allowing the adaptation wheel to complete its analysis of All for One's combat patterns. The villain employed multiple quirks in complex combinations, strength enhancement layered with impact redirection, kinetic energy manipulation supplemented by spatial distortion, regenerative capabilities operating alongside defensive hardening. Most concerning was his apparent ability to counter specific attacks with precisely tailored defenses, suggesting either precognitive capability or extraordinary analytical processing, possibly both. When Bakugo arrived at the rendezvous point, his expression showed rare sobriety. "The evacuation is nearly complete," he reported. "Professional heroes are repositioning to support All Might, but they're maintaining distance from direct engagement." "With good reason," Izuku acknowledged grimly. "All for One has demonstrated area effect attacks that could incapacitate multiple heroes simultaneously. They're right to be cautious." Their strategic assessment was interrupted by a sudden, catastrophic exchange at the battlefield's center. All Might launched what appeared to be a maximum output attack, reminiscent of his United States of Smash, though without the distinctive verbal declaration. All for One countered with a complex combination of multiple quirks, creating a devastating collision that generated a shockwave powerful enough to shatter windows kilometers away. When visibility returned, the outcome was alarming. All Might had been driven to one knee, his muscular form showing visible distortion around the edges. Steam rose from his body in the unmistakable pattern that preceded transformation to his true form. "He's reaching his limit," Izuku stated, alarm evident in his voice. "We need to move now." Without waiting for acknowledgement, Izuku activated full cowling at 85%, dangerously close to his sustainable maximum. The adaptation will expanded dramatically behind him, its rotation becoming almost blinding as it prepared his body for direct confrontation with Japan's most notorious villain. Bakugo matched this urgency, unleashing his most powerful explosion to launch himself toward the battlefield with extraordinary speed. "Don't you dare lose, All Might!" he shouted, the declaration carrying both encouragement and demand in equal measure. As they approached the confrontation zone, Izuku's enhanced perception captured a disturbing detail. All Might's right side had momentarily reverted to his true form's emaciated state before forcefully re-expanding. The symbol of peace was operating on nothing but willpower and fading remnants of One for All's power. All for One seemed to recognize this vulnerability immediately. "It's over, Toshinori," the masked villain declared, multiple quirks activating simultaneously as he prepared a finishing blow. "Your era ends here." In that critical moment, Izuku made a decision that would alter hero society forever. Channeling 100% of One for All, a level typically reserved for emergency single-strike applications, he interposed himself between All Might and the approaching villain. The adaptation will flaring with unprecedented brilliance as it worked to contain and direct this overwhelming power. "Young Midoriya," All Might shouted in alarm as he registered his student's intervention. The impact when All for One's attack connected with Izuku's guard was catastrophic. Even with continuous adaptation reinforcing his defenses, the sheer destructive potential of the villain's combined quirks created damage that rippled through his entire system. Bones fractured and reformed continuously, organs compressed and re-expanded, neural pathways disrupted and rerouted in desperate biological improvisation. Yet despite this devastating damage, Izuku remained standing, the adaptation will expanding to its largest manifestation, yet as it processed and countered this extreme stimulus. His body visibly transformed with each passing second, skin developing armor-like qualities, musculature reconfiguring for improved force distribution, skeletal structure reinforcing critical junction points. Another wielder of One for All for One observed with disturbing calmness, his featureless mask somehow conveying amusement despite its expressionless design. But with something extra fascinating. Before the villain could press his attack, Bakugo arrived from the opposite vector, unleashing his howitzer impact directly against All for One's exposed flank. The explosive force was sufficient to disrupt the villain's stance temporarily, creating critical separation between him and the injured Izuku. "Get back, you damn nerd!" Bakugo shouted, positioning himself alongside Izuku with uncharacteristic protectiveness. "You can't tank hits like that even with your adaptations." Izuku straightened despite the continuing damage rippling through his system. The adaptation will working overtime to stabilize his condition. "All Might needs time," he responded through gritted teeth. "We have to give him that time." Behind them, the symbol of peace struggled to his feet, his form fluctuating dangerously between muscular and emaciated states. "Young Midoriya, Bakugo, you must withdraw immediately," he commanded, his voice carrying authority despite his deteriorating condition. "This is not your battle." "With respect, All Might," Izuku responded without taking his eyes off All for One. It became our battle when he sent villains to attack our school and kidnap our classmate. Yeah, what he said, Bakugo added with characteristic bluntness. Besides, heroes don't abandon each other, right? Isn't that what you're always preaching? All for One observed this exchange with calculating interest, his masked head tilting slightly as he reassessed the tactical situation. How touching, he commented, his modulated voice conveying artificial amusement, the symbol of peace inspiring the next generation to sacrifice themselves alongside him. But sentimentality doesn't change the outcome. Multiple quirks activated simultaneously as the villain prepared another devastating attack, the air around him distorting with concentrated power. The era of All Might ends today, regardless of how many students stand beside him. What followed was a coordinated defense unlike anything the gathered professional heroes had witnessed before. Izuku and Bakugo, longtime rivals, transformed into reluctant partners, operating with synchronized precision despite their contrasting styles and personalities. When All for One launched impact-based attacks, Bakugo created explosive counterforces that disrupted the approach vectors while Izuku's adapted form absorbed residual energy. When the villain employed area effect quirks, Izuku deployed Black Whip to reposition both himself and Bakugo outside the danger zone while maintaining tactical pressure. Throughout this desperate defense, the adaptation will behind Izuku evolved visibly, its rotation becoming more complex and its manifestation more substantial as it processed All for One's attack patterns with unprecedented efficiency. Each quirk the villain deployed provided new data, allowing Izuku's adaptations to develop increasingly effective countermeasures. All Might, meanwhile, used this protective intervention to gather his remaining strength, forcing his failing body to maintain muscle form through sheer indomitable will. Steam continued rising from his massive form, but the fluctuations gradually stabilized as he concentrated One for All's fading embers into his right arm for one final, decisive strike. Young Midoriya, Bakugo, All Might called, his voice regaining some of its characteristic power. On my signal, clear the impact zone. Understanding immediately what their mentor intended, Izuku and Bakugo adjusted their defensive pattern, working to create momentary separation between All for One and themselves when the critical moment arrived. That moment came after a particularly devastating exchange left All for One momentarily off balance, a rare tactical opening against an opponent of his caliber. Now, All Might roared, lunging forward with his remaining strength concentrated into a single perfect strike. Izuku deployed Black Whip to pull Bakugo clear while simultaneously activating Float to achieve vertical separation. As they cleared the impact zone, All Might delivered his legendary finishing move, the United States of Smash, with every remaining fragment of One for All's power behind it. The impact was beyond devastating, it was history-altering. The ground beneath All for One cratered not meters but hundreds of meters deep, shock waves propagating outward with such force that remaining structures throughout Kamino Ward shuddered on their foundations. The atmospheric displacement created a temporary vacuum that was immediately filled by rushing air, generating sustained winds powerful enough to require Izuku's Black Whip to anchor himself and Bakugo against being blown away. When conditions stabilized enough for visibility to return, the outcome was clear. All for One lay defeated at the center of an impact crater large enough to contain multiple buildings, his mask shattered and regenerative capabilities finally overwhelmed by the sheer destructive potential of All Might's ultimate attack. But the victory came at tremendous cost. As the dust settled, All Might stood momentarily triumphant before his muscle form dissipated completely, leaving only his true form, the emaciated figure of Toshinori Yagi, visible to the gathered crowds and news cameras that had captured the entire confrontation. The secret of the symbol of peace was secret no more. Izuku and Bakugo landed beside their mentor as professional heroes rushed forward to secure All for One's defeated form. The adaptation will remain manifested behind Izuku, though its rotation had slowed as it shifted from combat response to recovery mode. All Might, Izuku began, concern evident as he observed his mentor's drastically altered appearance now exposed to public view. It's all right, young Midoriya, All Might responded with remarkable dignity despite his frail condition. This day was inevitable. One for One has been passed to you. It's only fitting that my time as the symbol concludes with the confirmation of your potential. These words might have once triggered resentment from Bakugo, but the explosive student simply stood in respectful silence, recognizing the profound significance of what had transpired. His rivalry with Izuku remained, but it had been transformed by shared combat against a threat that transcended personal competition. As medical personnel approached to attend to their injuries, Izuku found his attention drawn to the adaptation wheel that continued its gentle rotation behind him. Unlike previous manifestations that faded quickly after combat concluded, this one remained visible, pulsing with energy that suggested permanent evolution rather than temporary response. The wheel had adapted not just to all for one's combat capabilities, but to the profound responsibility that this moment represented: the transition from student to inheritor, from mentee to successor. Whatever challenges lay ahead would require more than physical adaptation. They would demand evolution of perspective, strategy, and fundamental identity. As news helicopters circled overhead, capturing the aftermath of this historic confrontation, Izuku stood alongside All Might and Bakugo, 3 generations of heroic legacy, united by shared purpose despite their contrasting paths. The adaptation wheel expanded slightly behind him, its rotation steady and purposeful as it prepared for challenges yet to come. The era of All Might had indeed ended today, but something new had begun, something shaped by adaptation rather than static symbolism, by collaborative strength rather than solitary burden. The Divine General had taken his place in hero society's front lines, not as a replacement for the symbol of peace, but as the evolutionary response to a world where single symbols proved insufficient against coordinated villainy. As emergency services secured the battlefield and medical personnel attended to the injured, Izuku's adaptation will continued its protective rotation, no longer just a quirk manifestation but a symbol in its own right. Whatever came next, it would face a hero designed specifically to adapt to its challenges, continuously evolving to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The journey ahead would not be easy, but then, meaningful adaptation never was. And that's how we close part 4, Fam Deku's evolving past anything we've ever seen, and the way this Mahoraga power is syncing with One for All. It's starting to scare even me. Drop your thoughts, theories, and wildest what-if combos in the comments below. I read everything, and y'all are creative as hell. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you're ready for part 5. The Chrono Crew ain't just watching the timeline, we're rewriting it. See you soon.